Good evening. Welcome to the July 12th, 2021 Town of Matthews Board of Commissioners meeting. I apologize for starting a few minutes late, but we had a personnel closed session meeting prior to this one, and so we're reconvening in short order here. I'd like to start with some introductions. On my left, your right, we have Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk, Commissioner Jeff Miller, Commissioner Larry Whitley, Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner, Town Manager Hazen Blodgett, Town Attorney Charlie Buckley, Commissioner Dave Bland, Commissioner John Urban, Commissioner Ken McCool, our Town Clerk Lori Canapino, our Planning Director Jay Camp, and our Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith. So thank you. I'd like to start with invocation from Mr. Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor. All who would care to, please join me in prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, as we pause this moment this evening, we give you thanks for the many blessings of life. We ask that you would be at this meeting with us. Ask that you give the wisdom and the courage to this board to make all the just and right decisions, knowing full well that their decisions impact not only tonight, but the future of Matthews. We ask that you put your loving arms around all of the members of our public safety, our police, our fire and EMS, and keep them from harm's way. We ask that you be with all the members who are here in attendance tonight, and that you also grant safe travel home from this meeting to everyone. These things we pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let me just say that it feels great to have these meetings in person again. It's been a long time since we've really had everybody back. So thank you, everybody, for all of you that are attending tonight. Mr. Manager, do we have any items to be added to the agenda?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we had a few people sign up for public comment, but I want to remind these folks that this public comment is not necessarily tied to the public hearing. So if this is not with regards to a zoning application, but just a public comment, then you're welcome to come up and speak. The first person I have is David Mullins. Can you give us your address, sir, please?
909 Evian Lane.
Thank you.
And I come to speak in opposition to the exception for Stumptown Station. I thought it was a great idea that that exception was given during the COVID restrictions, and I thought that was good to help our businesses in town. But I'm not speaking in opposition to the streetscape. I just started to review that, and it looked like it might be an interesting plan. So I'm not speaking in opposition to that. But I thought that Stumptown should not be given this advantage over the other people, other businesses on the street there. I looked at it today, and there's a 3-foot strip there. It's a very narrow sidewalk anyway, and then you got a 3-foot strip that cuts that down even more. So it's a very narrow way there. And so they're going to be reducing the flow on the sidewalks, which I think is difficult there. I think you were talking about using some of the parking spaces, but those aren't their parking spaces. They're public assets. They belong to the public. And so that's one of the advantages of being able to walk to downtown Matthews like we do, or ride our bikes, and to have this nice parking area and all there. So I hate to see that reduced. I think it would encroach on the right-of-way turn to the right there. You can't get past the cars to get down there to turn right if you're going to go right. Everybody's going straight through. So I think that would reduce the right-of-way there. I think it's particularly unfair to the other property owners, the business owners there, because they've paid for their or renting their frontage there on the road there, And this increases Stumptown's frontage at the expense of others at no charge to them, basically. I understood, I like the idea of fair market pricing. And y'all talked about doing fair market pricing for the rental housing you have. For that space, I think it should be fair market for what others are paying for their rental space. If this is given to Stumptown, then I would expect others to ask for similar concessions, and then you could have the multiple requests, and then you'd have kind of a hodgepodge there on Main Street. The parklets may be of interest concerning, the streetscape, so that's a possibility there. But I think you should ask, what do other businesses think about that? About them expanding out and really encroaching on their business side of it. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mullins. Jewel Jeffries was next. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jill Jeffries. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. My address is 1312 Woodward Avenue, Unit D301. I just went to the apartment not too long ago, so still learning the address. But I want to come here to this evening in regards to the Cinemark Movies 10 movie theater, which is located at 9508 Northeast Court, Matthews, North Carolina. I've been trying to find information in regards to trying to lease the building. I know from what I firmly know is where it used to be at the movie theater. I called Cinemark, I want to say last week, and they have no information in regards to who owns it, since they told me they no longer have it there anymore. So my next step was to come to the town hall meeting, and they also suggested I came here as well, because I've been trying to find out information as far as how to lease it, who do I go to, who actually owns the building. I didn't really know who else to go to, so that is why I'm here this evening. And that was pretty much all. I didn't really need 4 minutes, but it was just a question. That's all I needed to ask.
Okay. So what I suggest, if you want to call me, if you call Town Hall, just general information, ask for town manager, I can step you through that. I mean, we really don't solve that problem, but we can help you get guided in the right direction.
Okay, great. And I'm a videographer, so that's kind of why I want to look into the building, just for something to kind of bring in between both the city of Matthews and Charlotte, North Carolina, because I grew up in the Charlotte area, and I used to always go to the movie theater. So I know it's not a problem to bring Charlotte residents and Matthew residents as well, for something that I really would love to do for both cities, which really deals with like video media and photography as well. So that's kind of why I'm here today. But you said to contact the town hall.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And ask for the town manager.
Town hall manager. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next is Tyler Mundy. Okay, great. Pamela Mullins?
Good evening. My name is Pamela Mullins. I live at 909 Evian, Evian Lane in Matthews. 28105 in Hampton Green. So I love Matthews so much that this is the second time I've lived here, and actually in the same house. So we lived here from 1995 until 1997, and then my dear husband, who spoke earlier, wanted the farm experience. He wanted his big tractor and all the horses and things like that. So we moved away for 13 years. In the intervening time from when we returned in 2011, I had 3 extended visits to France. And the reason I went there was for my daughter to develop fluency. So we were there for a school term, and I experienced small town village living. And I told my husband, when you get the farm out of your system, I want to go back to Matthews, and I'd like to live in that same house. So he actually approached the current owners, and they were ready to move, and we moved back into the same house. So my purpose for being here, as I know that y'all are in planning stages. We were here at the last meeting, and we plan to be involved in local politics because I think it's so important for us to hear what's going on and how our taxpayer dollars are spent in our town. And I just want Matthews to remain a charming town. And I know that y'all have some protocol put in place to keep it that. And from what I understand, it seems that seems to be a vision for you too. I loved the idea of the parklets. I thought they were wonderful. And as I walked up here, I'm a big walker, and that's one reason we wanted to move here is for the farmers market and for me to walk to do business and things and support local businesses. So as I was walking, I noticed there's several pretty little garden areas that are dispersed about the town, and I thought maybe you could expand some of those, which would not necessarily involve taking parking space. The other thing my husband and I love to do is we love to travel, and we like to go to quaint towns like Matthews. And for us, it's very important to maintain the charm of a small village, as well as to have free parking and adequate parking for people to come. The other thing is I love our Labor Day stuff that we do. My grandson comes from Fort Mill, and we look forward to it. So I appreciate y'all carrying on all those traditions for our town. I support what my husband has to say about the situation with the parking for the business that was asking for that. I think it's important that we don't encroach upon our roads and our parking. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak that didn't get the opportunity to sign up? We'll move on to agenda item number 6, entertain a motion to recess this meeting for public hearings. I have a motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Urban. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll go on to item 6A, zoning application 2021-730, Williams Road subdivision to change the zoning classification from R15 to RVS on that certain property designated as 2914 Williams Road, and further being designated as tax parcel 193-441-69. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Good evening. This is application 2021-730, pre-public hearing staff analysis for a change in zoning. The address of the parcel is 2914 Williams Road, and there is a second parcel that has no address assigned, that is parcel ID 193-44159. The request summary is the applicant proposes to change the zoning of the property from R15 single family to RVS for the purpose of constructing 12 single family residences. And the next slide is a aerial photograph of the site. We have two parcels, one to the north, one to the south. And then also, then these are along Williams Road, close to Williams Station. And looking south from Williams Road, you can see that the tract is currently vacant and wooded. The next slide is just a brief summary. Again, the property is currently wooded and vacant. It's about 5.473 acres. Directly to the south is a single-family subdivision on Williams Station Road. And to the north, there are 5 single-family lot residences. Across Williams Road is a site with large single-lot family residences and a small single-family subdivision. Oh, great. We have the pointer. Yay. And there are no previous zoning actions on these parcels of land. Next slide is the proposed site plan. As you can see, it is 12 total lots. Stormwater management will be on Site B, which is the northern parcel. The total units per acre is 2.19 because the site is about just over 5 acres. Tree canopy required is 8% of the site, and provided is just over 8%. And the total open space required is 17.5%, and they have provided more open space than what the code requires. The minimum lot area for the RVS zoning is 4,500 square feet is the smallest lot size. In this case, the 12 lots are 7,000 is the 7,100, I think, is the smallest lot size. The largest is about 8,000. Then the next slide is something I have. It's basically superimposed to show the board what the proposed subdivision would be like, or as an impact to the surrounding area. The next slide is a summary of proposed conditions. And briefly, the exterior building materials will be a combination of brick veneer, stone, manufactured stone, and cementitious siding. Vinyl, ephes, or masonite may not be used as an exterior building material. Each dwelling unit will have a covered front porch at least 6 feet in depth. The portion of the site designated as community open space shall contain benches and other seating elements. And the applicant is going to look to obtain Hawk certification for the tree save and open space areas. The next slide is a summary of school impacts. This development is estimated to possibly add 7 students to the schools in the area. Approval of this petition may increase overcrowding and/or reliance upon mobile classrooms at the schools listed above, specifically Mint Hill Middle and Butler High, which are currently over capacity at this time. Percentage-wise, this development does not propose it would not impact a change in occupancy based on the percentages that are currently. In other words, it's already over capacity, and adding 2 or 3 more students would not impact the utilization of schools currently in the area. The next slide talks a little bit about the land use plan and adopted policies. The land use plan, it does not specifically make a recommendation for this site. However, it considers well-designed infill development such as RVS zoning, where appropriate and compatible with existing development. The proposed change is in zoning from R15 to RVS is generally consistent with the land use plan. And the last slide is staff comments and outstanding issues. The maximum cul-de-sac length is exceeded for this development. It is 400 feet in the RVS zoning district. So a public improvement variance will have to be requested. And again, some public works concerns was the planting strip along the bulb of the cul-de-sac was only 1 foot in width, and it should be at least 8 feet in width. Another concern was the future tax value of 12 homes may not be enough to cover the expense of maintaining the length of the cul-de-sac, which is approximately 830 feet long. The applicant is here and has a presentation, but I would be happy to take any questions from the board at this time.
I've got a question, Rob. Can you go back to the slide about the number of students generated? So the total is 7 students?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I initially thought you said 2 or 3, so I see per school. Never mind.
I did say 2 or 3. That is the breakdown for Mint Hill Middle is 1 and Butler High is 3. Those are the 2 schools that are currently over capacity.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions, concerns? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I'm confused by the second point under Planning Department. Tax value of 12 homes. They're in the roughly 400,000 range. So I'm going to guess that taxes to Matthews would be about $600. And so times 12, $7,400 a year on a brand-new street won't cover our maintenance of the street? I've not seen that before.
Yeah. Jay will address that question for you.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Miller, you'll probably recall up until maybe 2 years ago, we were running a financial impact analysis on rezonings. And this is a comment that came straight from me. Looking at the provision of public services and what it takes to really run the community, and at 2 units per acre with about an 800-foot-long street, we also have to provide solid waste services. So the point being, the existing area is fairly low density, but this development, may over the next 20 years generate $150,000 a year, or $150,000 total revenue over a 20-year period. What's the cost to kind of pay the freight for the community? And it is a rather long street. That was just a generalized comment.
Okay.
It wasn't us saying you shouldn't approve this development, but just to, we just went through our budget process, just be thinking about these things as we
Okay.
look at zoning approvals.
Okay, and we've, in that budget process, we identified at least $200 per home per year pays for Republic Waste. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Rob? Mr. Mundy, would you like to give your presentation?
Hi, my name is Tyler Mundy. I'm the developer for this project. As it's been said, we're seeking to go from R15 to RVS, residential various styles. We've heard Tyler Matthews is trying to move people more to RVS. We were originally thinking about R9, but I think this would be a better fit. So, move to the next slide. You guys have already seen this, just an overview of our site. I'll point out a couple things really quick. Would it be possible to zoom in a little bit? So I know it is a bit of a longer road, and I think it exceeds a little bit with the cul-de-sac, what we're allowed to do. You'll see from the site, it's pretty narrow. So we're actually, that leaves some constrictions, so we're not able to alter it really. We've got 12 lots. Average lot size is about 7,100 square feet, going up to 10,000. There's a sewer easement right there. And then you'll notice through our undisturbed open area, we added this walking path. And that was a recent addition from our May neighborhood meeting. So we'll have some benches there as well. Should be a benefit for this neighborhood as well as the surrounding development. All right, next slide. So some basic information that's been covered, I'll go through it quickly. About 5.4 acres. 12 homes total, 7,100 square feet up to 10,300. The undisturbed open area, 1.1 acres. We need to update the numbers on the proposed plan. So I think we've increased it by about 15% from last time. So I forget the exact number, about 4,800 square feet there. So it should be well over what's required. The proposed homes are between 1,900 and 2,200 square feet. And the target home sale price is in the low 400s there. Yeah, sorry. Let me just a little closer. So here's our proposed homes. You'll see some of the floor plans that we've chosen. Again, hardboard siding, some board and batten, brick veneers, and front-loaded garages. And we thought these floor plans fit the lot shape pretty well. And I personally, I think they're attractive, but I guess that's your opinion on whether you would agree. We can do the next slide. Again, this is a street view. You'll see on this side, that's all undisturbed open area. The homes are all loaded up on that left side of the road there. And that, again, that's just kind of the site restraints that require us to do that. And then next week, thank you. And the same shot essentially from the other angle, that'd be Williams Road right there. Do the next. So here's a picture of our undisturbed open area, and we'll have a walking path through that. Honestly, I moved here from New Mexico about 2 years ago, and so I'm from the desert, and the trees are one of the, my favorite parts about living here. So we're going to try and maintain as many as possible, and it should give a good feel. And that walking path, I think, will allow people to really enjoy that. Let me do the next. Thank you. So the creek was brought up in our neighborhood meeting quite a few times. It's a pretty cool feature. I guess it's a spring, if you want to call it that. And so that will be all within the undisturbed open area. Shouldn't be affected. Of course, the road's got to go over it, so we'll have a culvert there, but otherwise, that's going to be maintained and protected as a natural area. Thank you. So real quick, I'll go through a couple similar subdivisions that were recently approved. This is 2401 Rice Road, and as the crow flies, about 200 yards away from the Williams Road subdivision. It's a little bit bigger, 31 lots. Again, they went from R15 to RVS as we're proposing. Their smallest lot was 6,500 square feet, going up to 86. So our product's actually is a little bit bigger. And you can see the, in terms of lot size, and you can see that the homes were very similar. They haven't started construction on this one. I guess the developer's just holding off. All right, next please. Thank you. And here's one on Sam Newell Road, Tennyson. I think they call it they call it Tennyson. The developer is by Fiorenza. 73 lots, again, rezoned from R15 to RVS. The typical lot size is about 7,400 square feet. And again, you can see the homes very similar. It's a modern farmhouse feel. It's roughly 2,000 square feet. And they're selling them in the low 400s. And you may have noticed this one's been, you guys might know more than I do about it, but it's been sitting there for a little while, 1 or 2 years. And I've got a developer friend who's much more involved in the industry than myself. And he said the reason that it's been stalled out it's not the product, it's not the lot size or the homes, it's kind of an internal issue with the developer. So we hope to avoid the same issues. But yeah, so the problem isn't the product, it's kind of internal management. And then here you probably noticed 51 and Phillips Road. They're doing some of the dirt work right now, got a lot of excavators and stuff on site. 17 lots, R15 to RVS, about 8,000 square feet a lot. And yeah, currently working on this one. So 3 similar subdivisions. I guess we'd be the smallest. So in a sense, the least impact out of these, just our lot size. We can't, 12 is all we can fit reasonably. And so this is I'll go through real quick. Here's some broad overview. As we all know, Charlotte's growing. Charlotte metro area is growing very quickly. Matthews is obviously a part of that. You can see Charlotte was ranked as the 8th fastest growing metro area in the U.S. So we need it. Matthews, Charlotte needs more housing. We got people moving here, and if you or someone has tried to buy a home recently, you've probably seen the 20, 30 offers on homes. Not uncommon. I work as a real estate agent as well, so it's pretty typical. And the reason is there's not enough houses for sale. Next slide. And again, this is, I won't bore you with all of these numbers, but broad overview. The median home price in Matthews is $395. The average is actually $465. So our proposed product will be right between the median and the average there. And this is insane. So this month's supply, they say if you have between 3 and 6 months supply of homes, you're in a balance. So that would be if you add no homes to the market, how long would it take to sell everything currently available? Between 3 to 6 months is a balance. Above 6 months is an oversupply. Last year we had 1 month, which was already crazy shortage. This year we have half of a month. So there is a dire need for homes. And that's all I'm trying to illustrate with this data. And then our final slide. Second to final slide. So some of the criticism that came up from the public hearing, the neighborhood meeting that we had in May, is some of the lots to the, south were worried about drainage issues. They showed me some pictures of water pooling up in their backyards. And I think our subdivision will actually solve those issues. The grading that we're going to perform will direct water away from that backlot line into sewer drainage lines and into our retention pond there. So it should actually make it better and not worse than it currently is. So we've actually increased the amount of undisturbed open area by 15% since May. Just trying to listen to some of the feedback. You guys, there's complaint that we were, removing a lot of the trees, and obviously that's undesirable. So we're, keep some there. Again, the creek, there's a lot of concern for that spring there, but that will be within the undisturbed open areas that will be protected. I received some comments that this development, or really any development, would destroy the feel of Matthews. And I just want to say I don't think that's true because, as you saw, there's a number of similar subdivisions that are going up. Matthews is beautiful. People want to move here. They need places to live. So I think this is in accord with what the town of Matthews prescribes within the UDO, as well as other products that are coming up. And finally, a desirable subdivision or product created should increase the market value of the neighbor's homes, so that'd be hopefully a benefit. And then, so any questions? I don't know if is this a time for questions?
We'll first take questions from the board. Are there any questions? Commissioner Urban?
Okay, so I don't know if planning staff relayed this to you, but typically we like to see elevations of the homes and all prior to the presentation.
Okay.
So this is the first we've seen of it, so it's going to be real hard to make any comment at this stage of the game. So we may, after all this deliberation, continue this public hearing from that standpoint, but that's just not enough for me to sort of dive in here in a 30-second rub. But you pointed out some other developments that took place in that area that, although similar, are quite different. So the one on Rice Road, first of all, has connectivity to another development, so that is a very strong point. The second thing is that it has a lot of architectural features like split two-car garages, raised porches, and it has a really, really strong site plan that softens the impact of visually seeing homes in a shotgun approach, okay? So although similar, it is quite different from that standpoint. And then on Sam Newell, that was Adam Fiorenza who did that project. What's unique to that particular project is a really high-end aesthetic. So this is sort of more typical, and there's the high-end aesthetic and from that aspect. I'm not done yet.
Yeah, sure.
So, but anyway, so I'm reacting to what I'm seeing on the screen here. I need more time to digest it a little bit. I'm not too enthusiastic about the shotgun approach to this arrangement. I know that area really, really, really well. I also know it's a low drainage area, which is problematic from that standpoint. So we'll see what the other comments are at this stage in the game, but I need to sort of, maybe staff can get those elevations to us and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Sure. Can I respond real quick?
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. I was actually trying to model my product after the by Fiorenza one. So the architect that I hired, that this is kind of a rough SketchUp. And again, he was late in delivering the product to me by quite a bit. And so we're still trying to tweak that. I'm actually going to hire a designer to make those much more attractive. This is sort of like the base. I do plan on producing product more attractive than those shown.
Okay, well, but that's
I
why I'm here. I don't want to see what could be, what may be. I think everybody deserves what is going to be. So rest assured that we sort of need to see that. I'd like to see the elevations. I'm particularly concerned about the house that might be on Williams Road. Is it a blank side like a lot of homes are? Right, you've got some work to do, even to begin considering this from this standpoint, because this, to me, this does not sort of satisfy what I would consider RVS at this stage in the game.
Yeah, all right. So 2 go out of each.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Place the best. You play each other once, but you right?
One of the comments made by Mr. Will was that you're using brick veneer, and I've been around my colleague, Commissioner Urban, for long enough to ask the question, is that the lick and stick or real brick? Are these the brick, 1/4-inch thick?
Oh, no.
Fake looking brick or the actual brick?
Real brick.
Real
I like
brick.
that phrase, lick and stick.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience tonight that wants to speak in favor or against this zoning application?
Now, how many games?
Please approach the,
Do or don't? One person.
before we have the first comment, Mayor Pro Tem Garner's got a question.
Okay, so
I have a question for you, Mr. Mundy. I noticed, I was looking at the map on Polaris and noticed that you own one lot, and there's a lot owned by another person, and then these 2 lots. And I'm curious from the alignment or the layout you have here, is there a bigger vision for it, or is this
Yeah, so-
your?
No, this one right here is the only other one I own. And so originally this whole 8 acres was owned by a man named Zane Williams, and I purchased it from the estate. First this portion, and so the home it's under contract to sell, and we're actually scheduled to close tomorrow on that. So that'll be someone else's name tomorrow if everything goes through, which we'll do that. And then this is owned by Neil and Cassie Almeida. If this hasn't been updated, I don't know what the date is. It might have my name. That they bought it in April. And so this is it's not part of a large division. That's the full thing.
Thank you.
Okay, for those of you that would like to speak in favor or against this petition, please come up and line up by the podium. Give your name and address, and then feel free to make your comments. There is no time limit,
And the other teams will be 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and 1 and 2.
although I trust you don't want to speak for many hours. So,
Something does mean something.
again, please give your name and address, and feel free to begin.
Okay, thank you. My name is Matthew Howell. I'm at 2810 Cross Tie Lane. It's one of the properties touching this potential subdivision. And so, after reflecting, had a few thoughts. One that I wrote down was this proposed rezoning and building plan threatens to remove the core DNA that makes Matthews unique amongst Charlotte, its suburbs, and neighboring communities. Not only will it adversely affect Matthews over time, it will decrease the appeal and character that the Williams Station community and Williams Road area has developed. I really feel like moving this from an R15 to an RVS or even an R9, like you said, would have other challenges as far as the money and the revenue part, but also moving from simply needing, beds, whereas that's really not what I think Matthews was built as. It was built to be the small town that keeps coming up multiple times. We found a vision statement on the town website, desired future, small town feeling, unwanted future, loss of small town feeling. So I know that this is very much part of who we are, even walking through downtown. That's kind of where we want to be. So I understand the need for more housing, and there is definitely a shortage of housing, but I feel like if we were to move in this direction, it would definitely kind of reduce that feel for us. In the Williams Station subdivision right now, about 70% of the properties there back up to natural areas or trees of some sort. And this would reduce definitely all those down there at the bottom that bump up to this. So definitely changing the whole feel, the whole natural area. We purchased our house because it had this big natural area and a large deck that we could use and utilize as a living area. So I would imagine that would also get reduced as kind of the feel of the entire community is changing. Like stated, the very long straight road was of concerns. Drainage has come up. I've talked with Zane Williams before. That was his original concern. He tried to sell the property, but he knew that this drainage issue was challenging. And so finally, I feel like those distinctives are going to be challenged as we kind of ask ourselves, do we want to move to more of we serve Charlotte and the surrounding areas versus we have our identity that kind of is a place to live, grow, work, raise children, and go to school as kind of a small town feel. So I feel like leaving it as the zoning it currently is would accommodate that instead of rezoning it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess it all goes into YouTube. And my mom, who's in New Jersey, can turn on her YouTube.
Hi, my name is Donna Pointer Miller. I have the second house in Williams Station, in from Williams Road. I have very similar concerns. There are comments that are being made that from Mr. Monday saying that this will seamlessly. Okay, thank you. That these homes will just seamlessly be added into here. And the whole development, I was glad to hear that Mr. Urban, you're very familiar with this area. These lots are larger lots. They're older homes. There is a lot of wooded areas. The builder is talking, Mr. Monday is talking about taking down all the trees, between the Williams Station properties and his new homes. The only trees that he's going to leave are on the other side of the property where nobody is living. So the adverse effect is to us. All of us along here, again, as this gentleman said before, we bought these homes because it backed up to the natural area. I knew that the land was vacant when I purchased my home, but because of the drainage problems, I was pretty darn positive that no one would be able to build back there. And again, being the second house in, the drainage issues, Mr. Mundy was not aware of at all when he had the meeting with the homeowners. I brought some pictures. I'm not PowerPoint savvy, so I actually have physical pictures of the drainage problem that is there now, that he has no intention of resolving, or he didn't know how to resolve. But between the first house and the second house being mine, the land is sloped so that all the water from further up on Williams Road, it comes across the road. It also comes from Williams Road. It all drains in between these two houses where there's an existing culvert. But that existing culvert doesn't even work. It's a pretty large culvert. If you want to see these pictures, this is my backyard. This is not normally mud, it's grass, but this is what it's like when it rains. My yard floods every single year. If you're going to, and the builder told us that he's raising up the land where it's now dropped down in the drainage area. So he's going to raise it up. So now I've got a problem where the water is coming from Williams Road. It's coming through my yard. And now it's going to have to go back up. Well, guess where it's going to go? Water just doesn't dissipate. It's going to come back, and it's going to hit my house, and I'm going to be flooded out. What's my recourse? He hasn't talked about, he just says, oh yeah, we're going to solve it, but the drainage he has down there, you're going to have he's going to have to put in quite an extensive drainage system to get rid of the water. And every single lot along there, we all talk about it every year, about how it floods and how muddy, and our backyards are unusable in the spring. It's pretty gross. But that's a very severe concern of mine. My house is going to be gone.
Can you pass the photo around so we can take a look at it? Thank you. We'll give it back to you. Just take a look.
You don't need to give it back to me.
Okay.
I have the real ones. And then again, when you're talking about there's currently a dire need of homes, there is currently a dire need of homes throughout the United States. I can speak about this. I happen to be a mortgage underwriter. Every single town has a problem right now, but it's kind of an anomaly because of COVID, and you had a moratorium on foreclosures and evicting people. It isn't going to stay like this forever. This is the problem right now. But I don't see where this is going to solve anything.
Yeah.
And taking down the trees, it's just going to affect the neighborhood drastically and the drainage. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I saw it at one of the high school games they did. It was awesome. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Bob Cole, and I'm at 2807 Williams Station Road. I'm a newbie. Moved down here from New York about a year and a half ago, and after looking at homes for 3 months and over 30 homes, we settled on Williams Station because of the trees, the old style neighborhood. We looked at neighborhoods like this where it was just a turn off where you could reach out the window and knock on your neighbor's window, so to speak. It's just, yes, taking an open wooding area and stuffing whatever you can stuff in there. I have a couple little questions / comments that concern me. First and foremost, and a couple people have touched on the drainage, is how far below Williams Station Road is this access road going to be? Right now, that swampland is, I'm going to guess, 6 to 8, maybe 10 feet below Williams Station Road.
Friday, there's a festival in downtown.
To get rid of that storm water, or whatever you want to call it, even sewage and whatnot, you're going to have one massive pumping station, in my opinion. And when there are problems, is the town, do those people call the town for the solution? Kind of off the beaten path of this is, during this construction, where are all these construction workers going to park their vehicles? On Williams Road? On our street? That's an issue or a concern. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is in the one slide that showed a color picture of the street. To me, these all look like one-car garage homes. I don't know anybody anymore who has one vehicle. It's now a 2 or 3 vehicle world, family-wise, for the most part. So are these cars going to line the streets, and how is that going to hinder emergency vehicle access? You're going to have one car in the garage, and you're going to have, on the other side of the street, all your extra vehicles. But again, I think our biggest point in the neighborhood is where is all this water going to go, and how are you going to raise these homes up to the level of Williams Road? It's got to be at least that level, unless you're going to drive down off of Williams Station Road, and then you're going to have traffic pulling out of this development going up to Williams Road. It's going to create a traffic hazard, and you're going to have another intersection. I think I'm going to say, if I remember correctly, 300 feet from Williams Station Road. So you're adding another intersection within 300 or 400 feet of two current intersections, because it's a T right there. So those are a few of my concerns, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Next.
My name is Josh Hopsiger. I'm at 2829 Williams Station Road. I'm pretty sure I'm like the whole of the area there. And the flooding has just gotten out of control since Charlotte Water came and did the new pipeline, which I do want to say that they stopped emailing me back about the issue. But I just don't see with the flooding issue how they could possibly fix it, because where that development is, especially from where I am, it is a pretty, it's not steep, but I mean, it's a grade up the hill for where that development is. So I don't get a retaining pond above the development could possibly solve an already existing major issue, unless I misunderstood where the pond was going. I'm sorry. I just don't see how that issue is not going to get extremely worse unless they plan on coming into the lower houses on Williams Station Road and building up our property as well with an already major problem. If you want to ask Charlotte Water, I've sent them dozens of pictures showing even when it sprinkles, my house floods. And then to kind of reiterate some of the other points about just the green space, it seems like recently with town and Mecklenburg County as a whole, that there's been a big emphasis on keeping green space and keeping natural environments and protecting wildlife. I mean, you can go 5 miles in any direction from this area and find multiple acre lots that have vacant homes that are for sale already. And with the wildlife, the deer, rabbits, owls, and all the stuff that happens in that 8 acres, I just don't see, with all that's available for development that's already mostly open fields, why you would cut out 4 or 5 acres of green space when there's tons of options already available within Matthews, and you might not want to hear this, but Mint Hill, Indian Trail, etc. as well. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak in favor or opposition to this application?
Yeah, it's gonna be where we lost. Last Monday, I was fantastic.
And Mr. Mundy, when this speaker finishes, I'll give you an opportunity to respond if you'd like to any of the comments that were made.
I'm David Austin. I live at 2806 Cross Tile Lane. We live in the cul-de-sac that the property that actually backs up to the houses in that cul-de-sac. I live in one of those, and the second house from the end of the cul-de-sac backs up to my property. It is very close, the offset that house would be. I mean, our house is on an elevation that sits up higher than that property, and we would be looking directly into the windows. More than likely, they would look into our windows. There's all the trees. Mr. Mundy said that all the trees would be cut down. There would be none saved because of liability problems. I'm not sure exactly, all the trees on the lots would be cut down. He has attempted to make no kind of privacy buffer. You know, it's inevitable something will probably be built there. We're just trying to get it where it minimalizes the impact, doesn't invade on our privacy, and is best for everything. It would be nice if that natural area, he's telling me there's some restrictions why it can't, if it was on the side of the road towards our property and the homes were on the other side where there's no other close homes bordering. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mundy, would you care to respond to any of the comments that were made?
Mother ever gets a call. She's 93. She got a call. It's dying. You know, they all, I don't know if you stand to all this.
All right, real quick in response. So we don't have the grading plan available. I'm going to defer to the engineer to speak on that, Mr. Brian Rossi. But the natural slope is that it moves this way to the sewer easement. They put the sewer easement at the low point, and then it moves again down to it. So we're using the natural topography to serve these homes. But yeah, Mr. Rossi will be able to speak more in depth on that. I forgot to mention earlier, this right here is actually tree save area on the south side. So that would be a benefit, I guess, to whoever this is. They would back up to trees. But more than that, it's an additional on the space. And so I didn't mention earlier, but this top lot, we've called it Site D, it had deed restrictions. So a guy named Roy Hooks back in the 70s said that it can't be subdivided less than 1 acre per unit. So this one to the south does not have those deed restrictions. So for that reason, we were not able to put any homes up on this northern parcel. I spoke with a land use attorney, and they said that we're also not allowed to put the road on it because that's technically not a residential. Another one of the deed restrictions was it has to be residential. He said a public road's not residential in nature. So the road's on Site A here, but because this retention pond's a non-vertical improvement, that was allowable, they told us. So that's one of the reasons it's set up as it is. It's a little funny, but the original plan was not even to put Site B, to not include it, but I changed my mind down the road and we attached Site B to the overall development, and that freed up space here in these lots and made them all 10 or 20% larger because we're going to have to try and cram it in the back there. So it made the lots larger, which kept from this cramped feel, and I think better serves the development.
Evening. So grading wise, I'm Brian Rossi with EMH&T, civil engineer working with Tyler. Drainage wise, you have a culvert here on the south side of the property. There's one that comes in right here. And then essentially they all come down right here. Basically, just like Donna said, it kind of comes down to basically a dead spot. Basically just doesn't go anywhere, so it pools. So with this development, what we're proposing is essentially picking up that low spot, running it along the back side of the homes to bypass all of the new development. In accordance with the Town of Matthews Stormwater Manual, essentially we are going to design the storm sewer system for this development standalone. So stormwater will be collected from the new homes as well as the new road. It would come across the culvert into the stormwater BMP and actually route, either basically come in this way through a buffer impact or route back to the culvert here and continue on downstream. With the manual itself, post down to pre-release rates, so nothing substandard from that aspect. We feel that this collection system back here, when designed appropriately, will alleviate the current ponding issues along these back properties because it's giving an avenue to proceed and flow properly. Additionally, I think one thing, Tyler, we can kind of talk about too is there's an overhead power line back through here that services all these homes. So there is an area of clearing, but essentially, yes, we are going to have to correct the drainage issue. We will have to clear up to that area, and it'll be a plant back situation.
Commissioner Urban, did you have a comment, question?
Yeah, on the engineering side, understanding, yes, we know we had to control stormwater and drainage on our property. So let's say you've got X. All right. Right now, currently, there's a lot of overland flow from other properties coming across your property. That's Y. Do you have to address why? Because when you look at just your site proper, that's one thing, but you literally get a river, small river, running through there, and it's coming from other properties north and west of that site. So is that something you don't have to deal with, or do we expect it to go over this property and discharge onto the Williams Station property?
So when you have the overland flow that's coming from the other properties, you do have to consider if you are going to concentrate it more so, or you're going to affect the release rate, time of concentration, and effectively increase the flow down through here. The way we kind of counteract that is you take a look at what you're changing with the pooling and the ponding and basically bypassing this proposed feature, and you hold back the release rate from your new areas in this pond so that you're counteracting the overall effect downstream.
So, but would you end up slowing that down and making conditions worse on Williams Station?
No.
Because right now, I mean, you can drive by there after rain and look into it, and it looks like a swamp.
Understood.
So, thank you.
Commissioner McCool?
I got a few questions. First, is there going to be any plan to save any tree between these homes and where they back up to the other homes? I guess that's a question for Mr. Mundy.
Yeah, we would like to, ideally, but just given the nature of the, these aren't huge lots. So, yeah, with the grading that needs to take place, we're not able to do that, especially if we're able to, that's where the primary grading is going to take place to bring water out of the subdivision to the south there. So we have to clear the trees to do that.
So you have really no plan to delineate or separate from the homes that these are backing up to?
As is, there's not.
My other concern is the street itself. I mean, I'm looking at this, it is a straight stream. I imagine a dragway. I mean, you're imagining, probably families moving in here with small children. That's a pretty straight road where someone could go try and test out their new car and go fast. So, I mean, is there a plan to put speed bumps or anything?
That's a good question. We could consider that, definitely. My thought is about 800 feet. It's got a cul-de-sac on one end and a stop sign on the other. I don't, it doesn't seem like the best place if you're trying to hot rod, but I guess it's a possibility, so we could look at speed bumps or things like that.
Yeah, that's a major concern of mine as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Miller?
Thank you. Two questions. If you're gonna handle stormwater here and get it that direction, is that gonna be a piped underground, or is that a swale of some form?
It'll be a combination, just based on the flows that'll be coming to it. It'll be a combination.
And my other question is maybe more for Jay. What is the buffer supposed to be between these two?
2, 3 weekends. Well, let me see.
I'm closer to the mic, Rob. We do not require buffer from single-family residential to single-family residential.
Okay.
1, 2,
Thank you.
3 weeks. It's 15 early 26.
Commissioner McCool?
I definitely, I wanted to bring this up as well. Commissioner Urban said this. It's a little frustrating to come on the zoning petition day and see the elevations for the first time and have 10 minutes to stomach it. So that's frustrating. And I really would like, for the next time this is brought up, some sort of way to delineate between these homes and the homes that back up to. I can understand the frustration as a homeowner if I'm used to seeing woods in my backyard and now I'm seeing a property with 12 homes. It's a little frustrating.
Sure. What type of product would you be looking for, like a fence or?
I mean, something to make, I think the residents have a valid concern. In an ideal world, I would like to see the trees stay up or some amount of the trees stay up. I mean, that's another thing the town and this board is super interested in, is keeping our trees and keeping trees safe. So the more you can do that, or replanting or something like that, would be helpful to address these concerns.
So you think something like a replant along the back would potentially satisfy?
Again, you're the developer. I'm just trying to make sure the residents have some sort of delineation instead of just staring right down someone's house.
Sure. And I don't want to be rude or anything, but I did notice I was walking back there earlier today, and kind of, I don't know if you can see the numbers, lots 11 and 12, back up to, I believe, Mr. Howell's property. And I noticed that there is so about right here, there's like chicken coops back there and tire swings. And I don't mind if they use it, but it kind of feels like, they've been having free access to this land that they didn't pay for. And I don't know that I have a right to, allow that. I don't mind if they use it in the meantime, but you know what I mean? As an owner, I think there's different rights as opposed to someone who's just borrowing effectively someone else's land.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Touching on Commissioner McCool's point, we do usually see some sort of landscape plan that come with new developments, and I would like to see something along the lines of what will be replanted between the Williams Crossing neighborhood and your new neighborhood.
Along this line, correct?
Yes.
All right. Definitely.
And have you considered, or would you consider doing fewer houses than 12?
Potentially. What number would you be thinking? So our original plan was 13, and we dropped that down to 12 and made these last three a bit larger lots and expanded this tree save area. So we have come down a bit in size, and our current lot size is kind of nestled within the range of these similar subdivisions that we brought up earlier.
I'm just looking at it compared to the map, and there are 8 houses that back up to what would be 12 houses.
Yeah.
So it seems like
I understand. These do have abnormally large lots. I believe a lot of them are half an acre, and so it's awesome for you guys. My current house is, and I'm half an acre, about 0.2 acres. But so I would love to be able to do a product like that. The land's just so expensive anymore. I mean, these went up in the I believe the 80s or 90s. So this land was a lot more affordable, and for a developer, it's more practical to put homes on that large of a lot. It's kind of my mentality coming to it.
Yeah, sure. Come up to the podium. Please say your name.
Hi, I'm Jeff Andrews. My wife built one of the first 5 or 6 houses in this development in 1991, so we're long timers there. I agree that these new lots are a lot smaller. It's more in vogue now based on cost of land, that sort of thing. We didn't buy these lots, our houses, to be infiltrated like this. If there was a plan that put a buffer where we could live together. We understand this is the future, but we don't feel like we need to bear the brunt, property value-wise, lifestyle-wise, to bring this in. If it needs to be fewer houses, there needs to be a bigger buffer, so be it. If it has to be a private road to make it narrower, so be it. This is our life. It seems like we need a little protection. I'm not asking for it not to happen, just that it integrate with the existing properties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mundy, would you care to respond to that? I'll remind the audience to allow Mr. Mundy to speak without interrupting him, please.
Yeah, I definitely think that's fair. And I see where you're coming from, and we'll take that into consideration and bring in some landscaping on the back, a tree type, a cypress or something like that, to create a natural buffer between the two. I think that would serve both communities.
Commissioner Urban.
So I guess my question goes to Jay. Is this one of these cases where we want to continue the public hearing because there's a lot of outstanding things? I agree with Commissioner McCool and Garner that, landscaping would have been hugely helpful, maybe even a cross section back there to see a berm or plantings and things like that. I'd also like to sort of understand better about the deed restrictions. If you're combining this entire parcel under your name, do they really carry through? From this standpoint, and why you couldn't flip it over from that aspect of it. So there's a lot more to go here. And what happens is you go to the planning board, and Mike, you're just going to react to what you have here, and it's a big haul from there for the rest of us. So if we can do that and there's no objections, I would ask that we continue the public hearing.
Yeah, the applicant's comfortable with that, and I think we can go back and take the comments from this evening and take a fresh look at it.
Okay.
Is that a motion, Commissioner Urban?
That is a motion.
A motion to continue application 2021-730 on Williams Road by Commissioner Urban, second by Commissioner Miller. All in favor?
What time period? The next zoning meeting.
To the next zoning meeting, which would be August 9th. Did you amend? That's what you said, right?
That's what I said.
All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. So this will be continued at our next meeting on August 9th. Thank you. Move on to item 6B, zoning application 2021-733, text amendment to change the text to the existing UDO to reduce the footage separation between a distilling or manufacturing of alcohol and alcoholic beverages and dwelling units. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, the applicant has requested withdrawal of this application. Currently, they have submitted a revised text amendment that will be on the consent agenda for public hearing next month, and they would like to withdraw this request.
I have a motion to withdraw.
So moved.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Are they changing location? Are they moving to a different property?
Yes, sir. That will be the next item.
Thank you.
Motion to allow withdrawal by Commissioner Urban. Do we have a second? Commissioner Miller, all in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll go on to item 6C, zoning application 2021-731, Oak Lore Distilling. Rob.
All right. Yes, this is again a request from the applicant for withdrawal. They are pursuing a different location than the West Charles location. So again, that will be in front of you as a change in conditions for an existing site next month.
Motion to withdraw.
A motion from Commissioner Urban to withdraw zoning application 2021-731, Oak Lore Distilling, second by Ken McCool. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Commissioner McCool, sorry. Entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Miller. All in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll go on to planning and development business. Jay, could you please introduce the planning board, which I understand mostly are Mike and his invisible friends.
There are more of them here, but yeah, our chair, Mike Foster, everyone. Also joining us, I believe remotely, are Natasha Edwards, our vice chair, Jonathan Clayton, Tom Dorsey, Jim Johnson, Carrie Lamson, Mike Rowan, and Howie Labner. Also our youth voices, Prayag Patel and Miranda Stujanki.
Thank you. So I understand, Mr. Foster, you had no planning board meeting last month. There's no report, correct? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 8A, administrative amendment at home, 10101 East Independence Boulevard. Mr. Holloman.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, for the, or the applicant. Okay, so at the last month's meeting, excuse me, at last month's meeting, the board requested updates to the elevations, maybe some new drawings to show how the building would look different than what was provided, or some updated renderings. So At Home did come back with some updated elevations. They did add 2 parapet walls to the sides of the main entrance to kind of help break up the building a little bit.
Let me go to my PC.
Thank you, Jay. Those were added here and here.
I'm here.
I believe there were caps added as well since the last update, and then the other one would be here where Mr. Scott currently is. It was hard to tell from the elevations, and Raphael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but those dark gray walls, those do extend from the current facade out, correct?
Yes, those are extensions of the existing building envelope.
For a little bit of depth.
Yes, with a little bit of depth, some returns that you can kind of see going back on the roof line, and then obviously in your south and
so potentially.
Yeah, I can't.
You're speaking, sir. We can't hear you. I don't know, is he on mute, Maureen? Or
no? Can you hear me now?
did he respond?
Can you hear me
Mr.
now?
Scott, can you hear us and can you respond?
Can you hear me? I can hear Raphael, but are you able to hear me as well?
I can hear you, Scott.
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, those parapets are extensions of the existing building envelope exterior wall. And then they're accented with that dark gray color. And then we provided a little relief there with that white band separating the vertical from the horizontal dark color. And then, like you said, did those bookends on the at-home entry to kind of help accentuate that and give it a little bit of more architectural articulation, if you'd like to call it that. And then we went ahead and painted the remainder of the building, the rear of the building that I think is like a off rosy color right now. And then obviously updated the other elevations to kind of reflect all that articulation that's already going on there now with the existing building that we're trying to obviously retrofit without increasing that building footprint, except for the at-home entry.
Just one side note. He was speaking about the side elevation. So it is the bottom elevation. That would be the outward facing side elevation. So that's the side that above 74.
Correct.
One above that faces back inwards to the rear of the site. Jay, if you could go to the next slide. And then there were no changes to the proposed pickup lanes. Are there any questions from the board?
Commissioner McCool, sorry.
I guess maybe I feel differently, but it still seems pretty gray and monotonous. I don't see a significant difference between what we had problems with the last meeting. Yeah, that's my opinion. I still think it's pretty gray and really out front. I don't know how it's gonna, look compared to what is already there.
Let me see. Am I able to share my screen and share the existing conditions with you all if you're not familiar with that building? The color scheme of it now?
I guess my question was, we talked about, maybe adding color or a mural or something, and, planters or plants or something like that. And personally, I would have liked to seen that. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, this is Scott Fertitta. We've really taken a hard look at, the exterior and the interior design and renovation of the existing JCPenney store to really turn that into an at-home. And it is a challenging balance for us. I mean, in terms of adapting the existing, JCPenney architecture and conditions, maintaining at-home's brand and design aesthetic, and of course, cost considerations. And, when we take all that into consideration, we certainly have. Cost is certainly not one that we can, unfortunately, not give consideration to. But really, I think, to where Raphael was kind of going, when you look at, I think, what we've done to improve that and enhance it, when you look at the at-home, I mean, the light gray and the dark gray and that type of color scheme might not be, everyone's subjective aesthetic preference. But the JCPenney might not be as well. But when you look at it in comparison, I think it's an enhancement to the square, an enhancement to the, to the town, the way that we've presented it. All those other items that we can do, when you look at the cost of what it's taking to renovate this in the interior, it really is a huge investment all around. And we've done our best to balance those things of dealing with the existing store and structure, our brand and design aesthetic and cost, really to the best of our ability. So we're really asking for your consideration of the fact that we do have to balance those. And we are, a tenant, and we're not able to really modify the shopping center from an owner-landlord standpoint, but to do the best we can as a tenant to make it pleasing and inviting for both the residents and our customers. And we've really tried to do that to the best of our ability.
Commissioner Miller?
Thank you. I'm sure you've spent a lot of time on this, and that you will probably be a good store to have in our town. I think what Commissioner McCool is saying, and I would agree with, is the lack of detail. It's just gray, white, boxy. You can't tell from this elevation what's artistic about it, what's good looking, what's shiny, what's dull. I'm not willing to turn it down based on that, but it's just such a bland elevation that I think that's what's disappointing us. And Mr. Urban, Commissioner Urban, would you expound on that?
Thank you for asking, Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
I don't mind the color scheme.
I don't either.
But I will read it again. I think some of the former commissioners pulled up some other DS at homes. I'm not worried about the color scheme. I'm worried about the pedestrian scale. There's two scales here. One from Highway 74. We get you. We get the big gable end. We get the big sign at home. But at the pedestrian scale, it sucks. I mean, DSW has a colonnade and awnings. Office Depot right next to you has awnings and a colonnade as well. Why can't you do some sidewalk furnishings or awnings or a trellis or something to bring the scale down, that when a person arrives there, they're not just completely overwhelmed by this thing? That's what the rest of the center looks like. And that, I think it's an easy task. As it stands right now, sure, you'd be a great welcome asset. I've been to your Pineville store. It's humming. And to tell me a small ad's going to bust the bank, I don't buy it. So I won't vote for it.
Care to respond to that, Mr. Fertitta?
I mean, I certainly appreciate that perspective. I think from a design standpoint, I do just want to say that the at-home store and design aesthetic that we've done around it isn't highly articulated, but it is the brand, and it kind of goes with the brand of a lot of home furnishings at a very low price, and so we try to do a good, simple design aesthetic. But we also are are really tied to the building that we're going to. And I guess I would ask, when you look at the JCPenney existing storefront as it is, without the pedestrian connection and just what we're working with, we would be making an investment in modifying from our brand and modifying the shopping center. And I know it seems like it's not a big cost investment, but if you've experienced what we have in terms of the construction prices, it's not a matter of us trying to hit, a cost constraint or a cost budget. We're seeing prices that we're trying to mitigate to get back down to something that was where we were, 6-7 months ago in pricing, and it's just been astronomical. So I think that if you would, give us the latitude to work with Darren on something that we might be able to do in terms of an awning along that side, that we could see if we can, do so. It's not going to it might not be, it is subjective, right? So we're trying to design against guidelines that really aren't there. And when we say make it pedestrian friendly, there's really no specific thing. So I guess we're asking for your consideration of this elevation of the way we've done it. And we can take a look at something that can make a little bit of articulation along the walk path, but we really are under a time constraint that if we don't get approved and move forward, it's even more problematic for us. So just ask for your consideration on what we've done here to try to balance the design aesthetic of at home, the existing conditions, and our cost constraint challenges.
Commissioner Whitley.
I am a home goods shopper, and I've been to the Pineville and the one in Concord as well too. I've looked at both the designs, and it's a branding. I hear sometimes we ask for things, and I looked at JCPenney. The store is gone, and we as a town need something to this effect, to fill that void in the shopping center. I think JCPenney, everyone I heard from Commissioner Urban, they did a good job in trees and making the parking lot. I think sometimes we put a lot of restrictions on people that are businesses that's coming in empty places. And I know a little bit of what he's talking about. If anybody's doing in the building now, building materials are gone out of sight. It's crazy. And, we're in a time now where we're rebounding or trying to fill the voids. That's a nice shopping center. I do a lot of shopping in that shopping center, and a lot of my time is spent there, certainly with the school supplies, with the daycare. But I see they made an effort to come back with some changes. If we can do some honoring, and I heard a positive in my will, I will be in favor of passing and giving them opportunity to come to fill that void. So many businesses has gone out of business in this last year, restaurants, and you can hear them and just look around at where things are gone now. So that's my take. And I think if we ask people to come back with some plans and they do that, then I don't think we should just add more stuff on that, because I think we got to be considerate of the cost of business coming back here and to make sure that we have a good plan. This is their brand. I'm speaking from personal. This is their brand. I know Matthews have a brand, but I don't think we should really make them change all because this is what I see when I go, and I know I love to go in our stores and shop there. So I would be in favor if maybe they put an on it or two. And so I don't want to delay it and hold them up any farther. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you have a comment?
I agree that I appreciate the work and the additional design elements that you've added to the building. And somewhere between Commissioner Urban and Commissioner Whitley, where I support and appreciate your desire to move to your business to Matthews, but also would like to see some decorative elements added, whether it's a trellis, trellises to bring some greenery, or adding benches to bring a human scale to the front. And I don't know that those would necessarily be overwhelming additional cost to your business. And when we vote, I'm not sure if we could vote with some conditions or expectations if you find it agreeable that things like that could be added.
Is that a motion?
Well, Commissioner Miller had things to say, so I'm not going to make a motion yet.
Commissioner Miller is going to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the at-home elevations and site plan layout in that it's consistent. Should I put a few conditions before the disclaimer? I'll make a motion that we approve the at-home elevations and site plan layout, and that you give serious consideration to a few of the trellises or benches or planters to soften and give it a more pedestrian feel, and we trust that you will. And that it's consistent in that the changes to the land use plan, in that the changes are consistent with the land use plan as it promotes non-residential destination land uses along Highway 74, and that it's reasonable because the proposed zoning changes do not significantly impact the intent of the original rezoning.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Miller. Do we have a second?
Mr. Mayor, we do need verbal confirmation from the applicant that they're agreeable to the conditions that
I
were
saw a
set.
head shake, but do we have a verbal?
Yes,
agreement to
we are agreeable to that. I guess just one question: would this be something that the planning administratively would be able to evaluate some of the enhancements from a awning and plantings and benches, or how would that?
It could be done administratively. I don't think you need to come back before this board. Again, this is done in trust and good faith.
Yeah. Okay, great. Very good. We are in agreement with that. Thank you.
So now do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Mayor Pro Tem Garner. Any further discussion? All in favor? Renee, are you with? All opposed? That passes 5-2 with Commissioner McCool and Commissioner Urban in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move on to item 8A2, receive information on the streetscape design plan. Jay Camp.
Good evening. This is a large document. I'm going to let it go ahead and keep loading. Here we go. This is a project that, if you'll see in the memo, began way back in December of 2018 at the mini planning conference. A few of you were not on the board at the time. This was approved for funding back in February of 19. This project was delayed for two reasons. One, if you'll recall, it seems like a very long time ago, the downtown mobility study was a big project. A lot of public engagement. We worked with a consulting firm, and Block Design, who's been our consulting team on this, was gracious enough to hit the pause button and even attended some of the public input sessions to listen to the feedback we were getting during the mobility study. So what we essentially did was change this project on the fly to sort of reflect some of the feedback we were hearing during the mobility study process. Of course, COVID came last year. We weren't really doing a lot of work, so this project remained on hold. But this time we do have a draft ready for review this evening. Colin Brock with Block Design is here to talk a little bit about the design inspirations. And I want you all to keep a couple of things in mind here. One, this is not an adopted zoning document. This is what we're calling a pattern book. So these are a collection of ideas for inspiration when we do want to execute sidewalk repairs and renovations, pedestrian improvements. Some of the things we talked about, we heard from the public earlier about pocket parklets and things like that. So just think of it from that perspective. This is not a document that everything you see in it has to be built or else. These are just a collection of ideas. And we think that Block has come up with some really creative solutions to some of our design issues downtown. One last thing, I think you will have seen in the bullet points, there was a lot of talk about parallel parking versus angled parking. Another thing that we did throughout this process, and you'll see there's a few design scenarios here, the direction that town staff gave them was to focus from curb back to face the building. So there's no 20-foot wide sidewalks that you'll recall were proposed at one point during the mobility study that would have necessitated the move to parallel parking. So having said that, Colin actually has the fun stuff. He's going to kind of share some of the drawings that you may have had a chance to look at since last week. And I'll turn the mic over to you. Okay. I'll go. Let me get your...
All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much for allowing our firm to do this project. It's a really fun project. We had a great time. As some of you may know, I'm a Matthews resident, so for me it was a more personal endeavor as we come here all the time. My wife and I love Seaboard, so it's something that was an enjoyable experience. So the kind of the goal for our presentation, Jay and I were kind of going back and forth on how we wanted to work through this. I think maybe the best methodology, I want to be sensitive to the time. This is a 90-page document. We put a lot of heart and soul into it. Obviously, we could go page by page. I think that would probably be a little bit extensive, both on a time standpoint and maybe a little bit boring. So we get that. I don't know how much, how in-depth, or how much. Maybe this might be your first time seeing it. I'm not 100% sure. So what Jay and I decided was to hit some highlights and kind of structurally kind of go through this. My goal is to try to do this in about 20 minutes, maybe 25. And hopefully at the end of that, give you guys plenty of time to ask a lot of questions, which I'm sure there will be. So kind of kicking off that, kind of going to the table of contents just to kind of give you an overview of how we tried to organize our thoughts and put this together in a way that was kind of storyboarding, but at the same time, organically going through this to get you to the end goal. So everything from how we want to present the document, both from the public consumption standpoint, what made the most sense, the best clarity, was definitely a challenge for sure. Because do you start off with a bunch of plans in the beginning and then get into the content? Do you get into the hows and the whys and how did we get here and who we are? And, so that's kind of the direction we ended up going, was starting the story of the character of the town of Matthews, some of the structure and the infrastructure that's been built from a design standpoint, the history, and then looking at some of those inspirational images based on the feedback we received and looking through that. So we'll have an introduction. Introduction's pretty kind of vague. It looks at just kind of the purpose and the intent of the document, as Jay had alluded to earlier. And then we've got the inventory and analysis. For those who are not familiar with that, it's just basically what's there and a little bit of analysis of those different scenarios, different environments, different issues, concerns, problem areas, all that kind of analysis is placed in there. We won't really spend a whole lot of time there tonight. Most of you spent plenty of time and seen plenty of places that could need or want or strongly have some improvement. So, but we'll talk about our inspiration, which is kind of the third section, and that just kind of generating some ideas of content, both on the aesthetics, what this really going to look like from a character. Kind of the overarching theme that we saw from a lot of different buckets to fill is cohesion. How do we really create a cohesive brand, a cohesive image, a cohesive aesthetic? And so that was one of our goals for this this document, as well as just the effort in general. The next part of the structure is looking at, and just there is our opportunity. That's something that basically as Jay and I and some of the other members of the team from the town of Matthews looked at some very specific pockets within this study area that we'll cover in just a second that really need to be looked at specifically and at a more detailed level, not just kind of a 30,000 foot view. So we'll see a little bit of those and some of those kind of ideas, if you will, of how we could treat that. And then we'll kind of unveil the master plan and looking at some opportunities to enhance the entire streetscape for the study area and have some enlargements and some 3D imagery as well. So that's kind of the broad overview in 30 seconds or more. All right, so the first one is, again, the introduction, the vision, the small town feel. We heard a little bit of it tonight. It's a very passionate part of most of the people that live in Matthews is that small town feel. How do we really create that entire vibrancy that is the downtown area that's already in place, and continue that and continue to enhance that and evolve that over the next 10, 20 years, whatever it may be, as you guys see fit. And so just a brief introduction on that is just looking at some of the history, looking at some of the character. We took a lot of time. We took a lot of pictures of a lot of different elements throughout the town. So moving on to the study area, page 20 or page 7, real quick. I just want to give you a little bit of a overview of where we studied. So, and I noticed when I was kind of preparing a little bit, the image underneath got a little skewed, so it's not exactly lined up perfectly. But that red area basically is East Matthews down to Trade, and then it kind of veers off a little bit on Charles Street, just a little bit where the restaurant, forget the art, it's like an artwork, but it's not the portrait gallery. So that's kind of the main study area. It's what we call the core area. That's kind of the higher area of focus. The gray area is a little bit of a less focused, we call it a secondary area. For the most part, we're looking at some opportunities for trees, landscape, maybe some sidewalk enhancement, but nothing really kind of too crazy. We're not getting into paving, and pavers or anything, but just looking at ways that we can shore up some challenged areas, whether it's narrow street section or sidewalk sections, planting areas, and things of that nature. But the bulk of the focus has been in the core area. So page 25, kind of jumping in to the inspiration area or inspiration section. So again, as I mentioned to you guys earlier, this is simply just starting to look at patterns, look at certain levels of detail with inspirational imagery. So we've broken this down into various components. We've got site furnishings and planters and things of that nature. But it's starting to really evaluate and getting an idea of what type of those special elements that we can bring in that brings that cohesion, that brings the character, enhances the small town character. We don't look too modern. We don't look too traditional. It kind of wants to be in that Goldilocks area of just right, but also trying to bring in materials that are affordable. So we're not looking at, $9,000 benches for each bench, but what are some products that are reasonable, affordable, that have good warranties and things of that nature. So also looking at different character elements with planters, some of the things you see here, one of the comments that we received were there's multiple planters that are all kind of different types. Some of them were upheld by bricks and rocks to stay balanced. So some of those things that we can look at investing over the next decade or so to as money and funds are available. And then some built-in planters that are already kind of starting to set that pattern along the Pizza Peel area. And then you've got, more of the proprietary stuff kind of off the shelf that you could purchase as well. These are bike racks. I mean, as we become more walkable, and it's amazing to see just in town of Matthews that I've seen in the last 10 years of just the walkability and the energy. Once some of the restrictions came back, my wife and I started going to Seaboard, and just the amount of people and things that were happening on Friday was just a lot of energy, and it was really exciting to see. And so obviously biking is a part of that. You got bicycle shops there. So creating a little bit more cohesion beyond just kind of your standard wave rack. So maybe there's some opportunity to bring in some character, and that could be anything from a branded element, custom branded element, to some off-the-shelf stuff. Plazas and streetscapes, we've heard some parklets. That's another area of focus. You'll see some of the master plan elements. Just small little areas of respite, little areas you can stop and sit for a second, grab some ice cream, sit there with your kids, and sit on a bench. So trying to create those little pockets throughout the whole entire streetscape environment for those 2 blocks. These are just kind of going to more hardscapes as well and looking at different treatments. Obviously, brick being a prominent theme through Matthews. Artwork, you guys have done a great job of continuing to add to the artwork, and so for the most part, it's just what are some of those elements? We had some great discussions about some of the history that could be woven in there that you guys have already started with some of the things. I mean, the Stumptown, some of our guys on our design team really thought it's really a great story. On some ways, you can look at Stumptown, it's kind of like, it's not great. We cut all the trees down. But I think it's also a great story to help you reflect on what didn't go right, but we're revegetating, we're creating new trees, and maybe tell that story. I had no idea until we started this project where the Stumptown name came from. So it was a very interesting story for me that I think it'd be great to put that in some kind of neat artistic element that tells that story, whether it's a kiosk, storyboard kind of thing, or an art element sculpture that, one of the ideas is you could take a bronze stump, and you'll see later that could be a seat, and the story of the bronze stump tells the story of Stumptown and kind of where we were and where we've come to. And so there's different ways you could treat that. Trash receptacles, just another part of the site furnishings that would be that cohesive character that would tie in with the other site furniture. So that kind of gives you a quick overview of going through some of those elements. And so the next kind of section that we looked at was opportunities. So really what I want to do here for the sake of time, and we can go back obviously, is quickly look at some of those specific areas. So it might be on like page 37 to give you an example. We took a section, a kind of a typical section of a streetscape section, and then what can we do to enhance that with plaza space? And we'll see a little bit more detail as we go into the master plan. But just as we're working through the document, trying to formulate a thinking process that we do know that there's more than just a 30,000 foot view. We do need to look at some things at a 50-foot view and how we can address those. So planters, as we talked about, were one of them, specifically talking about, the beauty of the planters that are hung from the posts and creating more of those opportunities. That has historically has done a great job. So continue those scenarios where we can add to that with new areas of planting. And again, streetscape wise, these are just some images of looking at what kind of treatments we can do with hardscape and bollards and some more treescape. Having gone up and down the whole entire 2 blocks hundreds of times, but once you really kind of dove into the inventory and analysis, we really realized there was a much larger gap of street trees than we really originally had recognized. So how do we create opportunities to create more pockets? Also, there'll be some evaluations on some of the existing canopy that is there now on whether or not, it'll be probably a pretty forceful debate, I'm sure, on do you go ahead and redo some of the trees, even though they're kind of that end of life stage, and kind of start fresh and replant, or some of those trees that are kind of right in the middle. So there's going to be some challenging decisions on some of the current street tree canopy, and how do you want to, if you want to create that cohesive, uniform look, not necessarily, this kind of monoculture, if you will, but you don't want it so hodgepodgey that you've got this kind of different tree on every other tree. Again, these are just some ideas. Wayfinding, I think as we create this downtown feel, as people kind of come into the core downtown area, continuing some of the language that's already been invested in with the signage around kind of the periphery of the town of Matthews. Are there articulations off that signage that we can kind of cheat, borrow, and steal from? Or do we kind of go wholesale, kind of different? There's some of those questions that we kind of wrestled with as a group. I think there's some opportunities to be a little bit of a both, where we could establish some new standards for some signage, and but also kind of still have some of the existing design criteria that was from the signs outside the town. So again, this just shows some existing conditions there with the planters, the raised planters. So landscape, we looked at kind of in totality. One of the comments that we received was working with the arborist and the town arborist on some of the landscapes. We even looked at a true landscape palette material page when we looked at trees, shrubs, just to kind of start that standard of what are those plant material options that you want to see as that develops in the future. And so this kind of moves us into the kind of the bread and butter of it, which is the master plan, if you will. So what you see here is that first city block section from Trade Street. Kind of familiarize yourself. This is the section where there's the angled parking here. And the idea here was looking at, as one of the main entrances into town coming in from Highway 51, as well as, the other sections of 485, is creating a really nice hardscape pedestrian area that enhances the pedestrian experience, creates these little scenic pocket areas for restaurant spaces if this gets redeveloped into whatever it may be down in the future, as well as some of the work that's happening here, but also what creates an identity of you're now coming into the downtown core area. And so that was the overarching goal with that. Obviously, there's a lot of different pattern treatments you can do. It can be scaled back to whatever level, and then also some moderate levels of signage. I don't think our thought was you really didn't need anything grandiose, but I think there was some level of signage that we'll see a little bit later on in the renderings, the 3D renderings of definitely delineating the idea that you're coming into the town core. We've looked at some opportunities for better pedestrian enhancement here, similar to some of the characteristics of what's going at the new intersection that was just recently completed. And then we'll see some enlargements of those small parklets at those kind of nodes, which was overall was one of our larger goals, is creating those little nodes within the entire streetscape area. This again is right here at the new intersection that was just completed. This is that same intersection, so there's really nothing that's been redesigned from that standpoint. This was taking that plan from Alta Group, or I think maybe it's just Alta, taking their plan and incorporating that, but also looking at kind of bookending this other entrance from North End coming in, and also enhancing that with same treatment signage, little parklet areas, and really focus on the pedestrian scale of that area. Obviously, there's a lot of utilities running through here, so our focus was to try to draw your eye downward versus upward. And the reality of moving a lot of that utilities is probably financially not feasible. So unless there was a large donor or a very generous developer, that if this ever gets developed. But so our goal was to bring that eye downward into the hardscape element and try to look past some of the utility challenges. So these are just those enlargements that we have throughout the remainder of the document. And you can see here, this is, again, enlargement here at Trade Street, where this is the angled parking with the retail area here. And so just by taking out one of these parking spaces, you get the driveway currently that kind of comes into this area. What we look at here is a turn that allows you to still park, but you've got maneuverability. Now, the challenge here is you are creating maneuverability in a pedestrian zone, but in a lot of discussions internally, and is also with Jay, is we've seen some of these. You see these along the Central Avenue area in town where you've actually got where you've reversed back into the space off of the streetscape. So with it being just a small number of parking spaces, the goal here was also to not remove parking spaces from the existing tenant and not have at least have a net zero, if not a plus. So we were able to do that by reconfiguring it and give it a little bit more green space and enhancement of that corner, and allows this building tenants to have some outdoor amenity areas. If this ever became a restaurant, it gives them some little bit more room to breathe. And then again, having kind of that core monument. This could be, you'll see in the renderings, this could be a large, tall structure that could be either various advertisement components. It could be town news, as well as history, art. It could be mosaic. So a lot of different things that could be. Again, on the other side, as you look kind of down the cross section of a lot of the sections of downtown, we really felt like this, was the lesser established of some of the other businesses. So whether or not this ever becomes, and of course, the rumors that always kind of swirl around the hardware store, but it feels like this corner has the most opportunity to be developed in the next 20 years into something very different. So some of our goals were trying to create better streetscape environments to where whatever may happen here that's maybe doesn't have quite the level of establishment as some of the other businesses down the street, then maybe this might have the higher priority of creating a little bit more streetscape areas. Again, you're in speculation mode, but This kind of here again in this section here, here's the railroad, here's Trade Street. So as we just create this pedestrian crossings, enhancing that crossing, but also creating these little nodes and little pockets of greenery, for the most part, it's just taking up. Again, as Jay iterated, this is taking the plan from Alta. So nothing within this island is different than what Alta is showing. So we're not taking away or enhancing what Alta did. So this is still kind of within that. It's just moving it from just a grassy planting area to maybe something a little bit more energized with some seating areas. Let's see, what was we had 68. Okay, here we go. This, again, is another area here. You see kind of the key here, kind of the center. So this is one we kind of had a lot of fun jokes about with Jay and his team. Obviously, it's in the railroad area. So only so many things you can maybe possibly do in the railroad area. I know there's been improvements that have been made within the railroad area, but the reality is this really does make for some great opportunities for these little mid-block nodes between the two, in the middle of the core area. Just unfortunate it's right by railroad, but it does provide some great spaces and some opportunities for some more aesthetic enhancement. This was a little dialed in area that kind of goes back to the opportunities page of not really, the accessibility here from when you come off these parallels, you've got this kind of weird 2-foot section, and then there's a little retaining wall. There's not much pedestrian area. So we look to enhance that by some different planters, but also as this kind of comes in, this is kind of the kind of planned northwest corner of the new intersection. But creating that pedestrian and also ADA accessibility by providing a ramp. There's an existing ramp there, so there's just enhancing that with different hardscape materials. And along that same lines, this is kind of the section here towards the end, back towards Matthews, East Matthews, is enhancing that with the sidewalk, but also additional planters akin to what you're seeing in front of Pizza Peel, carrying that vernacular through, creating more opportunities for new trees. This kind of is a key. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. There's some large trees here, so some definite decisions at some point of, if this was to ever become part of it, and that would be the possibility of removing that tree and kind of starting fresh with some new trees and investing into the future, so to speak. So again, some difficult conversations when the time is appropriate. These are some simple cross sections that we did, just kind of showing that section. And as you can kind of see, this really here, this is section A. So let's see, bearings wise, what is that? Is that seaboard? I believe that's seaboard. Yeah. And, so looking at kind of larger cross section here with more pedestrian area, the planters to kind of give you protection from the vehicular area, and then creating a little bit of real estate, not a whole lot of real estate, but a little extra real estate from just some minor tweaks to gain a little bit more space with the existing sidewalk, but then those parklets as we had shown earlier. And again, this is the section. Again, these are the columns that we were talking about. They could be artistic, they could be rectangular. And, look at the cross section that was provided by Alta. This is section B, which I think is near, let's see, section B was near Trade Street, right? Oh, there's the railroad section. And this is that one. These were more the nodes near as you get closer to the railroad section, history nodes, art nodes, things of that nature. And again, revegetating with new tree canopy and creating that shade experience that you get like when you go to downtown Greenville and things like that, just a really nice shade environment. This was an aerial shot. Part of our scope was also to provide some aerials. So we did some drone photography through the site and provide that to the town and use that as a basis as kind of a photo montage of a rendering. So we did the rendering is looking at that from the perspective, obviously, of coming down. This is Trade Street here. You see there's where the angled parking spaces are from the retail building. And as we've shown, creating a little bit of pedestrian nodes on both sides, and something of interest here, whether it's, again, wayfinding, town news, upcoming events. It could be a digital component as we get more and more digital in our digital world. Maybe it makes it easier from changing out content, or it could be simplified, just things that are changed out. We have some enlargements of those areas, just zoomed in. So again, you kind of see a little bit of that design vernacular, signage, but nothing that's too in your face in Disneyland, something that's subtle. And it just kind of tells you that you're coming into that downtown core, something that's simple. A lot of this, some of this is kind of borrowed a little bit from, what was the town that we talked about? Hendersonville. Yeah, Hendersonville. I thought this was executed really well in a similar fashion. Theirs is a little bit further set off, but it was simple, a little subtle, but it was definitely a cue that you were in a different zone. So lastly, as Jay alluded to, we did a quick study of just some opportunities if you really had an opportunity to create some significant spatial differences with the goal of this was, how do we create the most amount of space of streetscape, and how do we create the most amount of space with some really enhanced parklets and have a net zero parking loss? And so that's a chicane, for those of you familiar with that term. It's basically just a crook in the road that helps control some of the speed. You see these in a lot of towns, Hendersonville being one of those, but it's implemented in various forms. I know we had a rezoning that I think was mentioned earlier, where we were on last year, I think maybe 2 years ago, where some chicanes were considered. So what this does actually allow is to create, some really much larger space. You do have some parallels mixed in there, which I know is not as desirable, but total net from the whole core area was, I think, net zero, maybe, I think it was either net zero, -1, which is kind of our goal. But as you can see, these areas really became significantly enhanced. And again, here for, if this ever gets redeveloped in this block, and even for this area as well. And then you can see the streetscape. This angled parking area has a significant amount. I mean, these are about 30 feet in length, so way more significantly larger. As you can see here, we pulled that back. We still had plenty of room to get a back out space and then get into the oncoming traffic. So this is a deviation from the current traffic patterns. But again, these were just ideas that kind of we went a little out of bounds, had a little fun with it, just because it was something we felt like we wanted to study to see what some other opportunities. But again, that was not necessarily in our scope. And I think, yeah, I mean, as far as secondary area, you guys are welcome to look at the document. Probably more important to take questions and answers. The secondary area really was just, again, looking at ways we could enhance the sidewalks and some planting areas. Nothing really, extraordinary in terms of adding anything, vertical planters or site furnishings and things of that nature, but just some simple improvements along those secondary cores. So that's it. I think I came close to 25 minutes.
Colin, let me just say, very impressive presentation. A lot of great imaginative ideas in there. I'm going to give everyone an opportunity that wants to make any comments, but I think a few things that stood out to me with the outdoor furnishings, I think it would be important in Matthews not to go with something, as you mentioned, like ultra modern, like those polished steel benches, something that looked a little more traditional and also cohesive throughout the corridor. One thing I noted, a couple of your photographs, but I've noted that make really magical places, at least in my view, from towns as large as Chicago to as small as Pageland, South Carolina, are the stringing up of lights or putting lights in trees in very small areas. It creates a real sense of place, and it looks really nice at night, kind of Hallmark movie-ish. Nice place to sit safe. I really liked the road treatment with the crosshatch. I thought that was very subtle. We have been presented in the past with neon pink and yellow polka dots and things that are just really crazy, but that looks like Matthews. overall, I just thought it was a really great idea. The best thing that you said that I never really thought about, and I'm going to say this, it's kind of, blasphemy in this town, but I've never really been a big fan of the name Stumptown because I'm a big tree guy, and I like Stumptown, and I look at our seal with a lot of stumps. So I think reimagining that as, yeah, we cut our trees down, but now we're Tree City, USA, and we're replanting those. That's awesome. That's a really good way to maintain our history and still kind of flip that.
Yeah, it's a great redemptive story.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. You're making me appreciate the name Stumptown more now. So that was great. Would anybody else like to make any comments? Commissioner Urban?
Well done, Colin. I guess, so you're at 30,000 feet, but like all good pattern books, they do have to dive down a little bit. So what is the next step? Because, showing 6, let's just use street furniture pieces, whether it's trash cans or benches or planters or anything like that. Normally in a pattern language, you're going to get down to a fewer, I should say. And so you would use, an area where it'd be a stripe of brick or an infill of brick or all brick, and those are your 3 options. So is there money in our budget to do the next step, or we're leaving it out here? Because frankly, I'd hate to ask the van, but you had to ballpark this budget. You know what the number is. I know you know what the number is.
Let's not talk about that.
Yeah. But I mean, but to be able to dial it down and begin to sort of say, okay, as a developer does things or whatever, he can go to the pattern book and say, well, I've got these 3 street trees I can use, these 3 trash cans I can use, these 3, whatever. Where are we at with that?
So it's a great question. And what we tried to do was create, and that goes back to that opportunities page. So Jay, if you go to, let's see, like 37, I think maybe. So what we tried to do was create I won't say a placeholder, but to a degree, 38 as it. So this would be that implementation. So instead of us saying that's an ANOVA bench, the such and such series, we wanted to start off and get that feedback. So, to your point, we don't like the silver look, or maybe it's too modern, or you can have another, the old traditional style. So this would be those pages where we could dial in and have those 2 or 3 options labeled there that says such and such bench by this manufacturer, this style, this family, and have those specified out. Once that's dialed down, switch those pictures out appropriately, and there starts to build into that specificity of materials and selections. That was our intent.
So who does that?
That would be us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Miller.
I know it's important to have a sense of place, but we approved a lot of, in the entertainment district, a lot of streetscape styles. Would it be appropriate or inappropriate to use that pattern here, or do we want to create a separate look there than we do here? Because it's very tasteful, the streetscape that's designed, including benches, lighting, and things like that for the entertainment district are quite tasteful, I thought.
Well, why don't we get that Wyatt Dixon? He prepared a pattern book, it was high level. Why don't we get that to Colin and staff? They already have it and sort of look at it. My guess is that Colin will come back and say, well, let's treat these things as neighborhoods. And so we'd have 3 distinct neighborhoods and kind of look at ways to find commonalities and all. But you're spot on, Jeff, about that. We don't want that cohesion that Colin's talking about to get diluted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from my viewpoint, and it's just a personal opinion, I do like the idea of having separate but distinct areas, this being our historic core, maybe being a little more traditional than the entertainment center, which might be more modern. My personal opinion. Any other comments? Again, great job. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Sure. Let's move on to item 8A3, receive information on housing trends from Nadine Bennett.
First of all, it's good to actually be here in person.
Yeah.
This is my first meeting. First time to address you in person. So y'all look really different than you do on the camera. And also I want to say that my presentation is going to be more in the 3 to 5 minute range rather than being in the 25 minute range. All right. No, nothing against that because it was a great presentation. It's not that. And this is kind of a Cliff Notes version of housing trends today. And it was done at the request of the board. At least that's my understanding. It was like in my first week here, Jay said, hey, why don't you start working on this? Okay. So again, it's kind of already a Cliff Notes version of what's going on with housing. And I'm just going to give you kind of a tour of what's in the document because I'm sure you've already had a chance to read it. One thing I do want to point out is that how COVID affects all of this. All of this was, all of these studies were done, the things that I read, it's all pre-COVID. So these trends have been in place for a while now. We're still kind of analyzing what's going on with COVID and how it's going to affect everything. But from everything that I understand, all it did was accelerate existing trends and exacerbate the bad ones. So it just sped things up. So on your demographic trends, big takeaways are that what we used to think of as like the traditional American family, the mom and dad living with the 2 kids and the dog in the house, is not really what's going on now. There are more single parent families. There are more multi-generational families. The actual family size is going down and household size is going up because there are more unrelated people living together too because of the cost of housing. For various reasons, more unrelated people are living together. And while demographics are shifting, preferences are changing right now. And in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, developers are still catering to that traditional nuclear family with the big houses and the bigger lots. And that's not necessarily what people want right now. So for the generations, I know it's a generalization, definitely, but it's kind of an easy way to talk about what's going on. You've got Generation Z, they're the youngest. They're probably still in the rental market. They're thinking about houses, but they're not there yet. The millennials, who for a long time we all heard, oh, they're putting off having those families and they're putting off moving to the suburbs. Now they're doing it. The oldest, they're in their 40s. We have a millennial or two, I think, in our midst right now. Maybe just one. So they've been putting that up and now they're doing it. They're having their families and they are moving to the suburbs kind of with a vengeance. Generation X also have a few here. I like to think of them as the forgotten generation. I couldn't even find an icon for Generation X. They're in their peak earning years. And they've also got aging parents moving in with them, and they've got kids are coming back home and they need bigger houses. The baby boomers they're the ones selling most houses. Although a lot of them want to age in place. Some of them are moving in with their Gen X and millennial children, and that creates multi-generational households. The silent generation, they are older. A lot of them also want to age in place, but other than that, they're kind of moving into retirement facilities or retirement communities. For rental trends, one big thing to know is that the share of rental housing is at its highest since I think it was 1960 at this point. And it's kind of plateauing right now, but one thing to note, it's the non-traditional renters that are growing as a share of renters. And that would be like older folks, baby boomers who just want to leave their houses, tired of the maintenance. They want to be around places, maybe like apartments are often places where you can walk. They like to do that. Millennials, again, they're having families and they would like to move into home ownership. A lot of them can't afford to because they are just debt saddled right now. Prices are going up. It's hard to put together a mortgage. So Gen Z, they're your primary, they're renters right now. Again, they're not really moving into the housing market yet. High income renters, that's kind of a new trend as well. People who used to probably be buying starter homes can't afford it right now, so they are renting instead. There are also a lot of renters by choice who just like the flexibility of it, so they're not all being forced to rent. So in terms of issues on the last page, there are a lot of big housing or rental buildings being built, and they're all kind of high end, and they're pushing out the lower income renters now. So we're aiming at all, because people can make money on it, we're aiming it at the higher end renters. So people being left behind, it's like a theme on every page. People are being left behind. People are being left behind. And so for where they're really being left behind, next one is in single family housing. And I feel like Mr. Mundy already made part of my presentation for me, because he already told you about housing stock and how it's article in the Observer in March, there was 18 days worth of housing stock available, which is crazy. And I'm sure you've all had conversations about this. I have conversations about it every day. Prices are going up, and houses stay on the market. Like if you wait for 10 minutes, you can't get that house. There are bidding wars. I've seen pictures of lines out of houses where they're just waiting to get into the house. People are buying it without any kinds of inspections. It's just kind of a frenzy right now. And I know we had one woman who said that that'll change, that's as a result of COVID, but it's really not. It's because since the Great Recession, housing inventory they haven't been building houses. We don't have enough housing stock right now. And we need places to live. And even before the pandemic, the suburbs, places like Matthews, were getting very, very popular. So as people have mentioned, people want to live in Matthews. You're moving out of the bigger city, maybe moving out of Charlotte. You want a little bit more space. Matthews has got that cute downtown. It's a great place to go, but you don't have the housing stock to accommodate it. One thing that I've gotten calls on since I've been here, and I know others have gotten calls as well, are the build to rent communities, which was kind of new to me. I mean, just in the past couple of months, this was new to me. And that is building an entire subdivision, basically, that's entirely to rent. And it appeals to a lot of different people. It appeals to people who can't get the money together for a down payment, people who are maybe just moving to the area and want to take a look around, but you still want to have the feel of the suburbs and the experience of the suburbs. And that's like a really hot sector right now. And again, they're knocking on your door right now. I think you can move. So just some general trends in communities. And we already had someone speak and tell us how much you like to walk. And people like to walk. And they like to have places to walk too. And that's something that people are looking for more and more now is I want to be able to get out there. I want to walk safely. And I want to go to a restaurant. I love to sit outside a restaurant. I don't want to drive there. I want to walk there. So a walkable community is not necessarily one where everyone has to walk everywhere. It's just you don't have to get in your car to go somewhere. It's also called a 20-minute neighborhood, so that in like a quarter of a mile, like a 5-minute walk, you can get to a certain number of places, and then maybe get to restaurants, you can get to a school, and everything is kind of in that 20-minute range. Missing middle housing is the next page, just over to the side there. Missing middle housing is the kind of housing that we used to have in this country kind of pre-World War II. If you think about a neighborhood like Dilworth, a lot of them, they've got duplexes and quads, although a lot of them are being torn down now, but it's that kind of neighborhood. And I actually live in missing middle housing myself. I live in an 8-plex in a building that was built in 1927 as apartments, and I live in a neighborhood that there's no way that I would be able to afford it unless there was some kind of that kind of middle housing. I don't want to live in a big apartment complex. I have a condo, but I really can't afford to have a single family house. So, and it's not just me. There are a lot of people out there that kind of suits the needs right now. And it's also a way, if you've got a walkable community and you've got places to walk to, you've got to have the density around it that supports those neighborhood serving uses. So you have to have some kind of density around it. You can move on. This is just so you can, look at it at your leisure. It's just kind of a snapshot of Matthews right now, and it shows how we're reflecting national trends. The number of households with children is decreasing. Population 65 plus is increasing. You've got more multifamily units than you used to. the median rent there, that's from the 2019 American Community Survey, and I'm sure it's higher than that now. And then the house price, I think Mr. Mundy had one in there too, but that was from Realtor.com just recently. But again, you just reflect national trends. You want to go to the last one? So these are some recommendations that we came up with. And again, this is just for informational purposes. You're not adopting this or anything. So when you're looking at all these many, many proposals that are coming your way, consider the idea of the 20-minute neighborhood where people can walk and what it takes to get that kind of neighborhood. And a lot of people talk about the small town feel. I think a lot of that small town feel comes from being able to walk somewhere, going to your neighborhood restaurant. It doesn't have to be just downtown Matthews that gives you that small town feel. It can be places in the community as well. One that I think is really important is to develop a formalized affordable housing policy. And that is something a lot of our peer communities are doing right now. And like I said, I felt like the theme of everything that I read was people are being left behind. Housing is so expensive right now, and it's just going up, up, and up. And from what I've read, it's not the kind of bubble. It's not going to just fall apart. It might go up less quickly, but it's just going to keep going up. So people who are trying to get into the home market for the first time are struggling. Like, you just can't do it. People of color are being left behind and disproportionately affected. Workforce housing is very difficult right now. So I feel like you really want to take a good look at it and see what Matthews can do to make sure that you can serve a diverse community. You want to focus on a mix of opportunities for renters and buyers. People want to buy homes. Not everyone does. People want to rent homes. Just think of them together. And then finally, and Jay can tell you that I've been talking about this since the day that I got here. I feel like you need to update your comprehensive plan. Right now it's from 2012, and Matthews has been evolving. Matthews is going to continue to evolve. And you really need to look at things more closely. I mean, this is just a snapshot. You want to really take a look at your town and make sure you're going where you want to go, and to think about how you're actually going to get there. And that's it.
Thank you, Nadine. That was very informative, particularly like the pictograph number 7. There's a ton of information on that one slide there. So that's very helpful. Yeah, that's great. Reminds me of the ones I used to have in USA Today. I don't know if they still do, but even better. A ton of information there. That's really good. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner. Well, Commissioner Miller, go ahead.
Okay. I was very impressed with this presentation. Admittedly, I'm in the real estate business as a landlord, but I tried to print this off and practically memorize it. I read every single word, and I thought, boy, I'm in a really good spot right now. And I just wanted to compliment you on it. This is really valuable information to know and absorb and adjust our town accordingly.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner McCool?
I wanted to reiterate that, I think this was definitely needed to be done. And I think it gives the information to us and the community that, we need. As someone who's looking to buy a first home, I feel the struggle right now. Sure. Homes are going in like a day, and it's really frustrating. But yeah, it's very interesting. And I think there's a lot to digest and a lot we need to work on going forward on this. Great job.
Yeah, it explains a lot, like why my son lives at home right now.
There you go.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I guess what I'd like to say is I think this is worth a planning conference. Really, kind of both the last two items are really great planning conference. Just looking at the visuals, it looked like this is going to take a tremendous amount of money on the last thing we saw. But to start pecking away at this, kind of like what we've done at Purcell Halsey Park, by the way, has been successful. And I also think about how the town developed and all these cul-de-sacs, and there's sacred, in many ways, sacred part of towns that like no commercial, and I think about like from Fullwood headed towards Providence High School, like people's heads would explode if you talked about. But in realities, at times to rethink that of, okay, it's not about driving commercial cars to a location, but how can people that live there do something without having to get in their car and go to the Arboretum or downtown Matthews. And I do think, and Jay, I think you call those town centers. Did you call them?
Activity centers, walkable activity center.
Walkable town centers?
Activity center.
Okay, activated centers, which is the notion of giving yourself an option, or whoever your family, you don't have to get in a car, but you can get food or a cup of coffee or maybe drink.
And it's interesting, people will say, oh, no, I can't have any of that near me. But you ask them what they'd like to do, and they say, oh, I'd love to be able to walk to a restaurant. Okay, well, to do that, you actually have to have that restaurant near you.
Yeah, I've shared this with a few of the commissioners. I was in Germany a few years ago, and this fella took me in his van to top of a hill to overlook their village. And he said, there's my church, there's the post office, there's my brother's house, there's the grocery store. And this is the first time in a month I've gotten in my van. And boy, you Americans are really stupid to go drive 25 miles to work and 20 miles to go to eat someplace. But they literally had their whole village where basically hardly anybody drove ever unless they were going somewhere far away. They walked everywhere. Again, very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 9, the consent agenda. Commissioner Whitley. you usually do the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda A through G.
A motion by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner McCool. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's go to unfinished business. Consider rental rates for town-owned residential homes. Mr. Blodgett.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. At the last board meeting, we talked a little bit about the town actually owns 3 habitable houses. We just purchased 2 of them are on Fremont Street, and then one of them is 4.5 acres that we purchased over on Matthews Mint Hill Road. It's a nice little it's a nice house, and the realtor that we used for the other 2 houses said she felt like it would rent for whatever $1,895 a month. I think what the question came up with the board when I was giving the manager's update, we could do that, and we could probably rent it for between 24 and 30 months before the fire station's built, and revenue's significant, right? $45,000 to $63,000. If we talked about affordable housing, 3 minutes ago with Nadine, the other 2 houses, which are each rent for about $1,200 and then $1,375. So I think the question for the board is, well, what do you want to do? I did reach out to Natisha Riviera Patrick, and she said, at Habitat for Humanity, we're really in the home ownership business as opposed to rental business. Then I did find somebody at Mecklenburg County, LaShonda Hartz, said she's happy to meet and talk about it. In fact, she's very excited about it. At some point, I think we probably want to have her into the board meeting, no matter what we do here, kind of get the county's view on where they see us, or all of us going with affordable housing. And I know this board has some interest in it, so I think it could be a nice pairing there. But I think the question before you all is, what do you want to do about this house on 3017 Matthews Mint Hill Road? Looks like we can get around $1,900 a month for rent. Or the other option is to take no action. Staff can get with this county representative and talk about what could we do with this house. Now, I don't know if she may say one house isn't really worth it, but it's certainly begin to have a dialogue. I think the question is, what's the will of the board?
Well, I'll start by giving you my opinion. I think affordable or attainable housing is important to every member of this board. We've talked about it for a long time. However, I'm not in favor with starting that effort with the few properties the town owns, in particular with this one, because we paid almost $500,000 for the property, and I think our fiduciary responsibility to taxpayers is to get as much as we can back on that house. Certainly keeping in mind that affordable housing is important and something we want to do, I think, on a larger scale soon, probably with some of the ARPA funds. But I see that effort more as a development or a multi-family housing somewhere. I don't think we should start with this one home. I think we should rent it for what we can get for it. It's my opinion. Commissioner McCool?
I've been a pretty vocal proponent of the affordable attainable house conversation, and I tend to agree with Mayor Higdon here. I also have a concern that if we start an affordable housing program and then we tear it down in 2 years, there's a lack of affordable housing we just took away. I think even if we rent this at the fair market value, I think we need to still have this conversation. Still need to put a significant amount of effort and time into making sure we have the right affordable housing plan for our town. But I tend to agree, especially like if we're going to tear it down in 2 years, that kind of stinks. Okay, here's affordable housing for 2 years. Now it's gone. I don't think that's the right way to go about it.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I would respectfully disagree with both the mayor and Commissioner McCool. I think as a board, if we stand for affordable housing, then we should be walking the walk as well. That doesn't mean making it dramatically less than the market rate, but more affordable than the market rate. If we don't do that with this particular house, I think that we as a board need to look at who our realtor is for those homes and see what initiatives they have for whether they work with vouchers or if they accept other forms of housing payment than paychecks. And we need to do an audit on the property that we own in Matthews so that we can make it more accessible to people.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? Commissioner Miller?
Thank you. I think we could rent it for roughly $1,750. The difference is a lot more reasonable. I mean, isn't that one property away from Walgreens and a roundabout?
It's not. No, it's
a nice property.
Or something
It's got a lot of tree perimeter and stuff on it.
Okay.
It's a nice to a neighborhood.
Okay. I would support $1,750, and I would urge whatever the decision is that we make sure that we run background checks on whoever we're going to rent it to.
Sure. Just clarification. And if the board wants to go into this field, we're not asking for the board to set the rate. And it's possible, let's say they can't get, if the board chooses to go this route, they can't get 1,900 and it may be 1,850. She was just giving me like a starting point. It could be less or could be more.
Commissioner Urban.
We're talking about two parallel tracks in my mind. I'd like to sort of set the market rate and let it be, as the mayor said, start paying back some of that on that property. We can be looking. The town should not be in the affordable or attainable housing business. We shouldn't have properties that we're renting and maintaining and things like that. But we should be cooperating with those nonprofits and private developers to do this thing, Dream Key, and those folks, and setting up a program, because when affordable housing is designed, it's overkill. It's more expensive than market rate, and it's done that way because of maintenance concerns. So if the town continues to hold these properties and isn't getting market rate, you'll start getting eaten alive with the air conditioner's gone out, the roof has gone bad, and things like that. And that's why the rates are the way they are. But so the reason we own these homes on Fremont or over by the park is that we plan to expand the park someday, and so those houses will be absorbed. So this is a stopgap thing. So I think we need to talk to the players that are in bed doing the affordable housing thing. I can get you lined up with all the players you want and set up that program and talk about it. And then these houses are just an interim situation, but we need to get out of these as soon as possible, from that aspect of it too. So, my opinion.
Commissioner Whitley.
I tend to agree with.
Oh, sorry.
I tend to agree with John. I didn't look at when we purchased these properties as affordable homes, but it's the town. I think what John is saying is correct. We have people that are looking at affordable housing in different areas, and I think that's an opportunity for the town to look at those developers or those individual nonprofits who want to do affordable home, but I'm in favor of starting out at market value, and if you can't get that, then like Jeff was saying, come down. But I think we ought to get as much as we can on that house, because it's got to build a fire station there. But at the same time, the other houses, this one right behind us here, that's something you can look at too. How many bedrooms in that house? On
Three bedrooms and each.
3 bedroom, 3 bath.
No. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
That's the one on 51.
Both. Oh, you talk about this new one?
I'm talking about the 51.
3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Yeah, but it's an open floor plan. It's a modern house.
Well, I can tell you what Ken's place out there, that if you get a 3 bedroom out there, it's going to be way over what you're looking at here now. And so it's ridiculous. What a 1 bedroom in Matthews now in apartment is $1,200 a month. There's a townhouse over there where Ken lived in front of Butler. Those 3 there. I was curious. I went and asked, but $2,300 a month for the townhouses.
Holy cow!
That's so. My suggestion is start off at market value, and if you can't get that, then drop down to where. But I think we ought to make some money off from it. That's my.
That's the motion, Larry?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any? We have a motion by Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Urban. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? That passes 6-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Garner casting the lone no vote. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 11A, new business. Consider acceptance of a land donation. Hazen, you gonna take that one?
Yes, sir. So this is it's an interesting one. This is a piece of property. Can we just show the survey? Third. There you go. So this is on Sam Newell Road. On the top of the page is close to Crown Point or the creek there, Irwin's Creek, and then Crown Point on the kind of top left. So what the developer wants to do is build on 2, 4, 6, 9 lots. He's carved out 9 lots, and then he's interested in donating the other 8 to the town. When we looked at it, oh, you can't hear me? Thank you. When we looked at it on the topo, I thought this looks like a pretty rough land. So a group of us went and walked it, and it's pretty. Corey, Jay, Rob, and I, and it's got some decently mature trees, a lot of scrub in there too, and so if we said we don't want it, we could say we don't want it, then they'd have to pay us fees in lieu of. Well, because there's only 9 lots, the fees in lieu of are less than $11,000. You know, some of these fees in lieu of, as y'all recall, have been in the $100,000, and thinking, oh, that's serious money you can put towards a greenway or a significant park, but $11,000 really isn't that much money. So we like the idea of really considering accepting it. I guess I'm just generally skeptical or leery. I think we should, I would not recommend the board take any action at this point, that we, do the due diligence, would be like a phase 1. And then I think, Jay, what you've mentioned to me is this developer has carved off lots. The question is impervious soil. We got to make sure the remaining lots that he's given us, this acreage, is still usable for something. So we just wanted to bring it to the board's attention.
But it has city sewer and water, doesn't it?
I'm sure it does. It's low back in there because you can see there's a pond.
Could you point to the area that you're talking about?
Yes, sir. Okay, so the entire property is right here, and it's how many acres is it? 8.5 acres. Okay, 8.5 acres, and then this gentleman is developing those 6 in those three.
Okay.
And so what he wants to do is give this to the town. And we could say,
Point to what do you want to
oh, he
give?
wants to give this, and then there's a little space in there, and then that right there.
Oh, okay.
And we could say no thanks, and he'd have to pay us $11,000 for the fees in lieu of, which we could use for virtually any recreational use. But after walking the land, and even if we didn't do anything, you could leave it in woods, right? And it has a value to the town that's an important value to the town. So, but we thought before we recommended just to accept the land, we would defer this for 30 days, maybe longer, so we can do some background work at it on it.
So when the manager discussed this with me, you know, my motto is, if it's free, it's for me. But
It's free for me.
if it's free, it's for me. But we do need to do due diligence to make sure there's not a toxic waste dump or something in the middle of this. I mean, it sounds too good to be true. But general, this sounds like a good faith offer to the town, and I think we would be foolish to turn down 8 acres of wooded land for free, unless there's something terribly wrong with it that we don't know about. So that would be my recommendation, as the manager mentioned. So is there any other comment? Or
I would support that, especially though with CJ and Public Works is checking stormwater runoff and things like that, because all of a sudden this is a centrifuge for flooding other properties. And they come back to us and say, good point, you got a problem here. You need to fix it. Now we're mitigating for $100,000. So we need to make sure that you're going in the right direction. The phase one, the whole 9 yards, you're going in the right direction.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, you and the manager walk this property. Doesn't it slope off away from the homes? Generally, it goes down from the roof. It slopes towards a 3. Is that right?
Yeah, I won't use another laser pointer. That sort of circular area at the bottom's a pond, and the property line for one of the joining properties on Lakeview Circle actually goes through the center of the pond. So Hazen actually swam out and found the marker.
Wow.
But
impressive.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all fair points. We'll check it out, do due diligence. If there's not any of those issues, I think we should definitely bring it back before the board, and we'll probably accept it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So this.
You gonna use the sun to point out what we have there?
That dotted line, is that considered the creek, or is that a driveway? What is that?
I think that might be overhead electrical. There's a few abandoned structures. I think that was a barn in the middle. There's also 2 houses, the squares you see.
At the bottom?
Yeah, these are 2 abandoned, they're boarded up houses, and I think that was a barn. But I would add a moment in all seriousness about the process. So the reason we brought this to you was just to kind of take everybody's temperature, see if you're interested. How this would formally work is there would be a preliminary, actually would it be a final, Rob? So a final plat would come to you, and this would be indicated as a land dedication. The board would then need to formally accept the land dedication. Then you would take a vote. So this is just sort of
Any other comments, questions?
Just real briefly, adding on to what Jay was saying, before they dedicate it, you need to have your temperature taken, because once they dedicate it, it goes off the tax rolls. So if you weren't going to accept it, you don't need to have it coming off the tax roll.
That's another good point. Mr. Manager or Jay, can you tell us what the tax value of that land is per year? Do you know?
Jay, if you're going to go on Polaris, maybe, because when I looked on Polaris, it hadn't recognized it as a separate lot yet.
It's fine. I mean, you maybe bring that back to us whenever. It doesn't have to be done tonight.
It's kind of a wash, because you'll also have tax revenue from the 9 new lots.
Right.
True, but once it's dedicated, it still comes off the tax rolls, whether the town accepts it or not. That's the critical mass here.
All right. Is that the finality of that discussion? I think so. Okay. Thank you. All good points. We'll move on to 11B, consider the town board's salary. Mr. Blodgett.
Yeah, I guess you learn something new every day. At the budget time, there was a discussion about the board's salary, excluding the mayor, but the board is underpaid compared to your cohorts. And it's like the average. Well, here's who we took as the average. So we surveyed Davidson, Harrisburg, Huntersville, Min Hill, Monroe, Mooresville, Pineville, and Stallings. and the average of those 8 is about $7,300, well, close to $7,400. You guys make $5,500, so it is reasonable in my mind that y'all's salaries could go up $1,500 a piece and still be very reasonable compared to your cohorts. That costs about $9,000 a year. However, at our department head meeting, we do a pre-agenda. Mr. Buckley said, let me check into that, and subsequently informed me that the board cannot raise its salary. Only time y'all can raise your salaries is when you adopt the budget ordinance. And I was not aware of that. I did not inform the board of that at the time. So you cannot raise your salaries until next year, fiscal year, if you want to do that, of course, until next fiscal year as part of the budget ordinance adoption. Now, you do have an option. That option is you could increase your some of your expenditure pay, and you could do that by $1,500, let's say. However, just so you know, it doesn't go in effect until the next board takes office. So you're not, if you did choose to increase your expenditure pay, or let's say travel expenses, you couldn't do it for yourselves. You would do it for the new board that would take office in December of 2021.
If I could just add a few comments on this. We had talked about this over time. I mean, Commissioner Urban and others have said that we don't do this for the salary, and I think if you look at it, it's pretty obvious that elected board salary is pretty low. Just so the public knows, the average commissioner, if he or she is doing his job adequately, typically can work 20 to 30, sometimes 40 hours a week for the pay of $5,500 a year, which is, we certainly don't do this to get rich, but I think it's reasonable that our town commissioners get paid at least the average of our local folks. And we talked about this, and it came up very close to our budget time. And so to be fully transparent, so that we weren't trying to slide something into the budget and be, hey, the town board's trying to, reward themselves, we decided to move it off to this meeting in an effort to be fully transparent so the public could comment on it. It was on our agenda, and that's why we moved it. And I did not know that we could only do this during the budget cycle. So, and also it was for the next board, which could be some or none of us. So this was all done in a good faith effort to be fully transparent so that board's not trying to hide anything. I think it's reasonable that this board, get paid a few dollars per hour for their efforts. It's not a lot of money. And so I personally do not have any desire to raise the expense portion of the compensation. And I think maybe we can revisit this next June if there's still a desire to raise the salary. I don't know if anybody else has any other comment on it. Commissioner Whitley.
I know we can't, and it's water over the dam. We can't go back and get that. But I do have a concern that we have been, and I've stated this, we have not had a raise since 2016. And it wasn't a raise for our base, it was a raise in our expense. And then Jeff did that, and I seconded it. I think we went
from 135 a month to 150 a month.
So if we're going to wait till another year, I would like to make the recommendation tonight, and I want it record, that we are now making 55, that we add $2,500 more to that, which would put us at 8,000, which is just slightly above average. And I'm not to be an average. This board has been very active in making sure every department get above average. We have passed budget for that. This year was a extremely passed, but we all came together and passed it. I don't mind helping people, but then I don't like leaving me behind either. I mean, it just makes sense that if we haven't had a raise now in June of 2022, would be 6 years. I'm in favor of raising us up $2,500 $100 to $800 for the base and leave the other expense, technology expense to what it is. That's my recommendation tonight. I don't want to come back and visit. I want to, since we were past, since we missed it, I want this to go on record tonight that that's what it's going to be come June, and then we can go ahead and move on with it.
Commissioner Whitley has so noted, but that will be the decision of the newly elected board, which again could include some, none, or all of us. So we don't know.
And it is for the next board.
Right. Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Good.
Thank you. You sure, Commissioner Miller? You don't have a...
Yeah, I'll just come in to the podium.
All right, we'll move on. This has been a long meeting. I'll give the mayor's report. I'll be short and sweet. I want to remind everybody, I'm really excited that our Matthews Alive Labor Day celebration is going to be large and in charge this year, September 3rd through the 6th. We have lots of really good entertainment. I know that Corey King and Leanne Moore and the whole Matthews Alive board's done a great job of planning this. I think this is going to be one of our biggest events ever. Everybody's ready to go get out and celebrate. So just use this opportunity to let the public know September 3rd through 6th. Please come join the festivities. We have really lots of great things, crafts, food, bands, music, it's a really great time. One of the largest Labor Day celebrations on the East Coast, and we're really looking forward to it. That's all I have. Going to the attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Town manager's report.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, I do have a comment. I want to publicly thank the town for hearing my recommendation last meeting to get plugs up here. I tell you, old folks, it's hard to get down on the floor, but I want to thank you for the plugs in here, whoever it is.
Are you a baby boomer or are you in the silent?
No,
there?
Yeah, we are. Me and Jeff and Dave Bland in the baby boomer.
All right,
thank y'all. Thank you
so noted. Who made a motion to adjourn? Everybody? Commissioner Bland and second by Commissioner McCool. All in favor of adjourning? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.